Chapter 350. Since a high-grade Supreme Being demonic beast dared to fight against a human Supreme Being, it was not only because of their powerful bodies. In fact, their strongest point was not their bodies or laws, but their innate skills. The cultivation speed of ordinary demonic beasts was extremely slow, and they were left far behind by humans. However, the heavens were fair. Although the cultivation speed of demonic beasts was many times slower, their innate skills were extremely terrifying. No matter what kind of demonic beast it was, once they cultivated to the Supreme Being level, they would be able to comprehend their own innate skills. The power of their innate skills was even stronger than laws. It was not rare for them to fight against humans above their level. Some terrifying divine beasts and super-divine beasts were born with innate skills. They did not need to cultivate and could grow to the initial Earth Saint level when they reached adulthood. Some heaven-defying super-divine beasts could even grow to mid-grade Earth Saint, or even high-grade Earth Saint. However, the more heaven-defying a divine beast was, the rarer they were. The heavens would not allow such a creature to break the balance to form a tribe. Although the 10,000-year-old demonic turtle was not a divine beast, or even an ordinary demonic beast, it had relied on its great willpower to cultivate from an ordinary turtle to a high-grade Supreme Being, breaking the limits of its race and bloodline. Its innate skills were even more terrifying than ordinary Supreme Being demonic beasts, and its overall strength was comparable to some ordinary high-grade Supreme Being divine beasts. The frozen lightning was the innate skill of the 10,000-year-old demon turtle. The power of this innate skill was incomparably strong. Even if it was an extreme human, it would be difficult to withstand this move. Moreover, this move was extremely strange and had many variations. It could be combined with the overturning water and sea consummate skill to form an even more terrifying consummate skill. Its power was close to that of the more powerful extreme human experts, such as Chiowanli. Die, little brat! The 10,000-year-old demonic turtle revealed 2 rows of sharp teeth, looking extremely ferocious like a shark at the bottom of the sea. Rumble! That frightening white lightning instantly turned into countless bolts of lightning that penetrated the endless sea water, causing Lin Feng to be completely enveloped in the cage-like lightning and sea water. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't completely avoid the countless bolts of lightning and the terrifying pressure that was everywhere. No wonder the 10,000-year-old demonic turtle was so confident. With such a terrifying move, even a human Supreme Being could fall for it if they were not careful. It laughed maliciously, as if it could already see Lin Feng being blasted into ashes by the lightning. Boss! Huang Wenbing couldn't hold it in any longer. He stomped on the ground and flew towards Lin Feng. Nono shouted, "Little Bing Bing, stop right there." It was already prepared. If Lin Feng was really in danger, it would definitely use that terrifying skill at the last moment. Even it was afraid of itself. Therefore, there was no need for Huang Wenbing to do anything. What are you standing there for? If you don't act now, boss is going to be in trouble. Huang Wenbing roared as he charged forward. The 10,000-year-old demon turtle completely ignored the 2 of them. His eyes were full of ridicule. Boom! 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 While the 2 of them were talking, the cage formed by the lightning and seawater pressure finally showed its power. But it was also at this moment that Lin Feng suddenly shouted, "Ah! Ah!" He raised his fist and smashed it down. Law skill, Earth's Wrath. At the last moment, Lin Feng finally used this trump card. It was a terrifying law skill that combined the law of strength and the law of amplitude, 2 of the 7 strongest laws. A mere primary-level Supreme Being actually wants to break through my lightning cage with a technique of the law? You must be dreaming. The 10,000-year-old demon turtle sneered. It didn't think that a primary Supreme Being could break the lightning cage that even a peak Supreme Being couldn't do anything about. It was no different from a fantasy. Boom! In the next moment, the aura around Lin Feng's fist surged. An incomparably terrifying power was multiplied. Crack! The absolute power of absolute strength caused the space below Linfeng's fist to shatter. That punch was like a mountain falling from a high altitude, carrying with it billions of tons of power as it came crashing down. This was the strongest power of the Earth's wrath. This was Linfeng's strongest attack. The power of this attack far surpassed the result of his experiment just now. Because the experiment didn't need to use his full strength. Only in a life-and-death battle did he need to use his full strength. Under this punch, the so-called lightning cage was like a piece of paper and exploded with a loud bang. The 10,000-year-old demon turtle's mocking expression instantly froze. Then, its face changed. Impossible! It was impossible for a primary supreme being to have such a terrifying attack power. Was there any joke in the world that was funnier than this? Ah! Linfeng's punch didn't stop. After breaking the lightning cage, it didn't stop and continued to hit the 10,000-year-old demon turtle's shell. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon seemed to have understood Linfeng's intention, but he wasn't worried. He snorted coldly and said, "My turtle shell is the strongest part of my body. Even the limit of a human supreme being can only leave a mark. Don't think that you can break my defense just because you broke my lightning cage." However, Linfeng didn't seem to hear it. That punch smashed down like a huge mountain. Simple and violent. The terrifying power of the law of strength and the law of amplitude caused this power to increase infinitely, forming a power that could destroy everything. Under this power, not to mention a mountain, even a large city would be smashed into smithereens with a single punch. Boom! Linfeng's fist hit the 10,000-year-old demon turtle's shell. The 10,000-year-old demon turtle's body shook. It was in pain all over. A large amount of blood flowed out of its mouth and fell into the sea like a waterfall. However, it didn't care. Its long neck bent and its head slowly looked at the turtle shell. Then, it coughed and sneered. Cough. Human kid, cough cough. I said that the turtle shell is my cough cough, my strongest defense. Just as it said this, a sound rang in its ears. Crack. Then, cracks appeared on its shell that was covered with spikes. Finally, it broke into pieces. Along with a large amount of blood, it fell in all directions. In the next moment, the 10,000-year-old demon turtle's huge body suddenly exploded. Boom. It was as if a mountain had been blown apart. Countless pieces of demonic beast flesh and blood filled the sky and flew in all directions. Blood dyed the sky and the sea red. The 10,000-year-old demon turtle, that had once dominated hundreds of thousands of kilometers, was removed from the Xingfeng plain. Until its death, it still couldn't figure out why it had died in the hands of a mere initial-stage human supreme. Why its turtle shell, which had the strongest defense, couldn't even withstand a single punch from the other party. Huang Wenbing's charging figure suddenly stopped. Then, he stared blankly at Linfeng. Nono's eyes were also wide open, and he was shocked. However, Linfeng didn't notice Huang Wenbing's and Nono's reactions. He only knew that the 10,000-year-old demon turtle's shell was a true treasure. He had to quickly pick it up. He couldn't waste it. Swish. His figure swept down towards the sea below and plunged straight into the sea. A moment later, Linfeng flew out of the sea's surface with his body dripping wet. Although he looked very disheveled, there was a faint smile on his face. His harvest this time was quite bountiful. The turtle shell, a material from a high-stage supreme, is known to have the strongest defense. According to the standards of refining materials, it can definitely be considered a top-grade treasure material. Moreover, it is the most precious armor-type material. If I use it to refine armor, the effect will be at least 50% better than ordinary armor-type materials, Linfeng calculated in his mind. Based on the surface area of the turtle shell, it can at least be used as one of the 5 king armors. This harvest could be said to be a pleasant surprise. Through this battle, Linfeng had a better understanding of his own power. If he used his full power, he would already be no weaker than a peak autarch like Chowanli. If they were to fight, the chances of victory would be 50-50. Boss! Huang Wenbing and Nono flew over. So formidable, so formidable! Huang Wenbing said excitedly. Using the power of an initial stage supreme, he had killed a high stage supreme that was comparable to a peak autarch. This was simply a miracle. He had never admired Lin Feng so much. Even when Lin Feng was promoted to a 6-star blacksmith, he didn't admire him so much. In the past, he was able to fight on par with a mid-level supreme being just by relying on the law of force, and he was very proud of it. After all, at the level of supreme being, there were very few people who could fight above their level. He was already considered a genius among geniuses, but compared to Lin Feng, he was still a few levels behind. Although Lin Feng also fought above his level, he was able to kill a high-level supreme being demonic beast with the cultivation of a beginner supreme being. This kind of battle record had never been seen before in history. He suddenly felt that it was a wise decision to joke and accept this boss back then. One day you will be as powerful or even more powerful than me, Lin Feng said. He wasn't lying. With Huang Wenbing's talent, he would probably become an Earth Sage expert in the future. As for himself, the chances of breaking through to the Earth Sage realm were very slim. Who knows when Huang Wenbing would surpass him? Huang Wenbing was stunned for a moment, then said seriously, "Boss, I believe in you. You will definitely break through to the Earth Sage realm." Lin Feng smiled bitterly in his heart, shook his head, and said, "All right, let's not talk about this for now." He changed the topic and said, "Although I killed this demonic beast, I also expended quite a bit of origin power." He took a deep breath. "That full power punch just now used up about 10% of my spirit energy. After deducting the spirit energy I used to move and dodge, I can only use the wrath of the earth 9 times in a short period of time." This was a rather serious problem, and it was also his greatest weakness that had been exposed in this battle. 9 times. Nono's eyes widened. 9 times is already a lot, okay. Lin Feng was startled. That's right, 9 times is also quite a lot. As long as he grasped the right opportunity, 9 times could produce an incredible effect. Chapter 351. However, compared to attack and speed, my defense is a fatal weakness. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a hint of worry. This could be seen from the result of his first head-on collision with the 10,000-year-old demon turtle. Although a part of the force was neutralized, the aftershock of the collision still sent him flying, leaving him in an extremely sorry state. On the other hand, the 10,000-year-old demon turtle was only pushed back a little more than 10 feet and was not affected at all. His current situation was that he could not be hit by the enemy. Once he was hit, even a high-level supreme martial artist could kill him in one blow. Not to mention, there were high-level supreme martial artist demon beasts, peak supreme martial artist humans, and even peak supreme martial artist demon beasts. If no one used the precepts, then he wouldn't be afraid of anyone. Even if Yen Jun or Mingi were at the peak of the supremes, he would be able to withstand their attacks with ease. After all, his own origin energy defense wasn't weak. In addition, he had the defense of the 3 runes spirit armor. As long as it wasn't an earth saint, he was confident that he could withstand it. However, if the enemy used the precepts, then their attack power would increase exponentially. This wasn't something Lin Feng could withstand. Defense was definitely Lin Feng's weakness, because he had not found a way to use laws to improve his defense. He had tried all the methods, but they were not very effective. Boss, didn't I tell you?" Nono was stunned. "You were not foolishly studying defense, were you?" Lin Feng was speechless. "When did you say that?" Hearing this, Nono shrunk his neck and said weakly, "I seem to remember saying that." Lin Feng said in annoyance, "Okay, stop keeping me in suspense, hurry up and say it." Huang Wenbing interrupted at an inappropriate time. This, actually, we all know. Was Lin Feng the only one who was kept in the dark? I thought you knew, boss. Nono said embarrassedly. Maybe because this is common knowledge, every supreme martial artist knows, so I did not tell you. It was not until then that it remembered that Lin Feng did not have a teacher, nor did he receive any in-depth guidance, so he was not clear about a lot of general knowledge. This was something that even Lord Black Rice had overlooked. From Lord Black Rice's point of view, it was impossible for the descendant of Senior Lin Hai to not know such common knowledge. All right, hurry up and say it. Lin Feng could not guarantee that he would flip out. When Nono saw that Lin Feng was about to explode, he hurriedly said, "It's actually very simple, you don't even need to research it yourself. You just need to extract the various laws and use them to strengthen your body. Although it's very slow, under the constant strengthening of the laws, your body's strength will continue to increase." Others comprehend a single law, so they need to extract the laws that help with defense to strengthen their bodies. But boss, you're different. You comprehend a mixture of laws. Every law you extract contains the effect of strengthening the body. So, boss, you can directly use laws to strengthen your body. Moreover, the effect should be extraordinary. After all, there were a total of 7 laws, and they were the 7 strongest laws. The effect of strengthening the body would naturally be extraordinary. It's that simple? Lin Feng looked at Nono. Nono said with certainty, "It's that simple." Lin Feng opened his mouth, but did not know what to say for a moment. After a while, he looked at Huang Wenbing. "You also increase your defense like this?" "That's right. Every sovereign is like that." Huang Wenbing coughed, and very patiently answered this idiotic question. Supreme's defense comes from 2 ways. One is armor, the other is the body. Other than that, there is no other way. Using elemental energy to increase your defense is actually a temporary way to form an armor, and the effect is relatively limited. Nono added, "Different laws have different effects on strengthening the body. The more powerful the law, the better the strengthening effect. In addition, different law attributes will cause the body to be good at resisting different attacks. For example, at the same level of supremes, the one who cultivates in the law of wood is good at resisting the attacks of the one who cultivates in the law of metal, but is easily injured by the one who cultivates in the law of fire. Supremes who cultivate in other laws will mostly be evenly matched against those who cultivate in the law of wood. Of course, there are no absolutes in this world. If this supreme who cultivates in the law of wood has a very deep understanding of the law of wood, he will not fear the attack of a supreme who cultivates in the law of fire. The 5 elements counter each other? Lin Feng was thoughtful. Then if I use the 7 strongest laws to strengthen my body, there shouldn't be many laws that can restrain my body, right? Nono didn't hesitate at all. None. A body strengthened by any one of the 7 supreme laws of nature was invincible. What's more, boss, you have completely gathered all the laws of the 7 strongest laws. After strengthening your body, it can be said to be perfect. There is absolutely no one in the world who can restrain your body. This was the benefit of a powerhouse who had comprehended a mixed law. Although it was difficult to advance to the Earth Sage level, they could still obtain some benefits as a form of compensation. This kind of compensation was simply enviable. I basically understand now. Lin Feng's brain worked at high speed. Attack is divided into 3 parts: law, weapon, and body, physical strength, and the use of elemental energy. Defense is divided into 2 parts: armor and body. Speed is divided into 2 parts: law and body, mainly the use of elemental energy. Am I right? Nono nodded and praised, "Boss is boss. I only said it once, and you completely understood." Huang Wenbing said coolly, "That's it. I finally understood these basic questions." Lin Feng sighed. This was the disadvantage of being an unorthodox monk. Although his cultivation had reached the supremacy level, he still didn't understand a lot of basic knowledge about supremacy. Fortunately, he had Nono, this omniscient fellow, with him. Otherwise, he didn't know how much time he would have to spend to understand these questions. After this lesson, Lin Feng deeply understood the importance of a good teacher. While thinking, he suddenly lowered his head and frowned. A light flashed in his eyes. "Who is it? Come out." Huang Wenbing's expression changed slightly. "Someone's there?" Nono was also surprised. "It can't be, right?" Even so, they still became vigilant and released their spiritual energy to scan. The water below suddenly rippled, and a huge creature quickly swept away from the sea, fleeing in panic. "If you want to die, please continue to flee," Lin Feng sneered. The creature trembled and suddenly stopped. It was obviously terrified of Lin Feng. "Come out, don't sneak around," Lin Feng said to the sea. Soon, a giant octopus-like monster slowly emerged from the water and slowly rose into the air. Nono curled her lip. "TCH, it's just a beginner supremacy monster. I was worried for a long time." Lin Feng ignored Nono and looked at the octopus-like monster in front of him. "Speak, why are you hiding in the sea below us?" The octopus-like monster was very afraid of Lin Feng. It just saw with its own eyes that the overlord of this sea area, the 10,000-year-old turtle monster, was blown up by Lin Feng with one punch. Facing such a terrifying human, it didn't dare to resist. It believed that if he wanted to kill it, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. It looked at Lin Feng with a complicated expression and said in a low voice, "You guys are in big trouble." Hearing this, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad premonition, but he didn't show it on his face. He asked indifferently, "What trouble?" "You guys only know that the Lightning Black Turtle King is the overlord of this sea area, but you don't know that the Lightning Black Turtle King is the subordinate of the Southern Sea Ice Dragon, one of the 3 protectors of the Southern Sea. You killed the Lightning Black Turtle King, you can't hide it from the Southern Sea Ice Dragon. When the time comes, the Ice Dragon will definitely send the other 2 protectors to deal with you. Both of your faces have been recorded. Neither of you can escape." The octopus-like monster spoke in human language. "If I were you, I would have run away long ago instead of waiting for death." "The Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea!" Huang Wenbing couldn't help but exclaim. As a member of the 8 great families, his understanding of the Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea was incomparable to ordinary people. He couldn't help but look at Lin Feng and said in a heavy tone, "Boss, something big has happened. This octopus-like monster didn't lie to us." Lin Feng's heart sank. As expected, they had gotten into trouble. Although he still didn't know who this Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea was, even a fool could guess that this guy was definitely not a simple character. Even the 10,000-year Black Turtle King was only its subordinate, and even Huang Wenbing was so afraid of it. It was enough to imagine how terrifying it was. Huang Wenbing smiled bitterly and said, "The Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea is a peak supreme being, divine beast. There are 4 majesties in the boundless sea area of the Xingfeng Plain, and the Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea is the strongest among them. Rumor has it that he has 3 protectors under him. 2 of them are peak supreme being demonic beasts, and 1 is a peak high-level supreme being demonic beast. I didn't expect that the one you killed just now was the weakest protector under the Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea." When he thought about how they had inadvertently provoked the most terrifying divine beast in the boundless sea area, he felt suffocated. This time, even the 8 great families wouldn't be able to protect him. Apart from the legendary Earth Sage, no one could stop a peak supreme being divine beast. And why would the high and mighty Earth Sage protect him? Peak supreme being divine beast. Lin Feng's expression became unprecedentedly solemn. Just this name alone was enough to give people endless pressure. I'm afraid the strength of this ice dragon of the southern sea isn't weaker than the leader of the 8 great leaders of the despair prison, Supreme Being Mo Lu, right? Moreover, apart from the ice dragon of the southern sea, there were 2 peak Supreme Being demonic beasts. Facing such an enemy, even Supreme Beings like Mingi and Yen Jun would be scared out of their wits. He forced himself to calm down and asked, "How long will it take for the ice dragon of the southern sea to find out about what happened here?" Huang Wenbing thought for a moment and said, "The ice dragon of the southern sea is the ruler of the southern sea. He has many eyes and ears. The matter here should reach his ears within a few hours." Lin Feng's expression became even more unsightly. "However, in my opinion, the ice dragon of the southern sea won't personally take action. He will send the other 2 protectors." Huang Wenbing continued, "After all, 2 peak Supreme Being demonic beasts are enough to deal with any enemy. There is no need for him to personally take action." As he said this, he laughed bitterly. "Even so, we are still powerless against 2 peak Supreme Being demonic beasts. Peak Supreme Being demonic beasts were equivalent to peak Supreme Being human experts. And there was more than one. With Lin Feng's current strength, he was no match for them. "How long will it take for them to catch up?" Lin Feng asked calmly. 16 hours at most." 16 hours? Lin Feng took a deep breath. "In such a short time, we can only reach the northern part of the Han Dynasty's imperial capital. We are still quite a distance away from Zhao." It seemed that they couldn't rely on Lord Blackrice, Poison Eye, and Killer. Although they were Earth sages, under the suppression of the Wind Punishment Plane's planar laws, their strength was greatly reduced. They couldn't come to Lin Feng's rescue. "This time, we can only rely on ourselves. At the very least, we must think of a way to hold on until we reach Zhao. As long as they reached Zhao, they wouldn't have to fear the revenge of the ice dragon of the southern sea." However, the originally short distance had now become incomparably long. His eyes flashed with madness. "Let's do it!" Wenbing. Lin Feng looked at Huang Wenbing. "Do you believe in me?" Huang Wenbing was silent for a moment, then nodded firmly. Lin Feng took a deep breath. "Very good. From now on we will escape north. As long as we reach Zhao's imperial capital, we will be safe." Huang Wenbing's eyes lit up but then dimmed. Was it possible to reach Zhao's imperial capital from the southern sea in 16 hours? "Let's go. Whether there is hope or not, we can't give up." Lin Feng patted his shoulder with a heavy expression. "We can't afford to waste time. P.S. Requesting monthly votes. Refining VIP Group 168605329. Refining VIP Group 204276549. Chapter 352. Nono, Transform. Lin Feng roared. Without any hesitation, Nono flew away from Lin Feng's arrowhead and transformed into a huge creature. This was a giant bird that was emitting a strange light that resembled a phoenix. Although its size was countless times larger, it still maintained its unbelievably beautiful appearance, making it hard for people to take their eyes off it. "This is Second Brother's real body?" Huang Wenbing was surprised. Lin Feng's figure suddenly turned into a blur. At the same time, he urged, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go." Nono then shouted, "Hurry up and get on my back." Only then did Huang Wenbing react. He immediately exploded with his fastest speed and flew onto Nono's back. "Let's go." The 3 of them didn't waste any more time. At Lin Feng's roar, their figures turned into streams of light and disappeared into the horizon. The octopus monster stared at them with its mouth agape. After a long while it said, "So fast." Whoosh, whoosh. On the surface of the South Sea, Lin Feng and Nono's figures swept past at high speed, forming 2 hurricanes that blew up the surface of the sea more than 30 meters high. It was as if 2 speedboats were sailing past. Such a big movement immediately attracted the attention of the monsters, fishes, and prawns in the surrounding sea. It's a human expert and a bird expert. Hide. The monsters in the sea all dived into the sea, afraid that they would accidentally provoke the enemy. Just by looking at Lin Feng and Nono's speed, they knew that they couldn't afford to provoke them. Naturally, they didn't dare to use their spiritual power to sense their cultivation. In their opinion, this kind of speed was at least that of a high-level supreme. Huang Wenbing was covered by the huge feathers on Nono's back. Therefore, no one noticed that there was another person on Nono's back. "Boss, get on my back too!" Nono shouted. Lin Feng maintained his fastest speed. The elemental energy in his body was quickly depleting. He didn't even turn his head and shouted, "No! Bringing Shangbing along has already affected your speed to a certain extent. If you bring me along, your speed will be even slower. If this goes on, none of us will be able to return to Zhao alive." Nono said anxiously, "But boss, your elemental energy consumption is too fast." Lin Feng said, "Don't worry about me. I can hold on." Huang Wenbing, who was hiding on Nono's back, blamed himself. He had never hated himself so much before. He hated himself for being useless and only being a burden to Lin Feng and Nono. If it wasn't for him, Nono and Lin Feng could have been even faster. They might have been able to escape. All in all, Lin Feng and Nono's speed was faster than Huang Wenbing had expected. If they could maintain this speed, they really might be able to escape the pursuit of the two protectors of the ice dragon of the South Sea. Faster, faster, faster. Lin Feng was sweating profusely. His breathing was hurried. In just half an hour, he had used up a full 10% of his elemental energy. But this still wasn't enough. At this speed, they still didn't have any confidence in escaping the pursuit of the two protectors. Boom! Boom! About an hour later, Nono and Lin Feng had already escaped the sea and entered the territory of the Han Dynasty on the Azure Wood continent. They were flying high in the sky at an extremely fast speed, comparable to the speed of an ordinary supreme being. The friction between their bodies and the air caused their bodies to turn red, accompanied by the sound of lightning striking down. Ordinary people might not know what that was, but ninth rank and supreme being powerhouses knew that it was two super powerhouses flying. But they were also very puzzled. What urgent matter did these two suspected supreme being powerhouses have that they could explode with such terrifying speed? It was as if they didn't care about their lives as they flew in the direction of Zhao. But they didn't dare to use their psychic energy to probe, because that would be a provocation to an unknown powerhouse. They didn't think that they could survive the joint attack of two suspected supreme being powerhouses. Even if they weren't supreme being powerhouses, but high-level supreme beings, they still wouldn't be able to resist. After flying for another hour, Wenbing, how much further? Lin Feng's elemental energy had already been used up by more than half. Huang Wenbing's voice was heavy. There's still 2/3 of the way. At this speed, we should be able to reach Zhao in 6 hours. In at most 8 hours, we will reach the capital of the state of Zhao. Lin Feng's heart sank. Only 2/3 of the way. But his elemental energy had already been used up by more than half. He shook his head. "No, I can't give up. Go faster." He clenched his teeth and increased his originally terrifying speed by a bit. In the center of the southern sea, in a huge underwater palace. This was an ice crystal palace, beautiful as a dream. "Your Highness." 2 huge figures appeared outside the palace. "I've just received news that Turtle Demon was killed by a human supreme being 4 hours ago." A faint and elegant voice came from the palace. "Ah, that old tortoise was actually slaughtered. It can't be, right? Although its turtle shell isn't as strong as our defense, it's still difficult for an ordinary supreme being to break through. Even if it really encountered a supreme being powerhouse, it shouldn't be impossible for it to escape, right?" The voice in the palace said indifferently, "No need to doubt, I've already confirmed it myself. It's true." After pausing for a moment, the voice sounded again, Although we sea monsters have some agreements with the continent's experts, this time, it was the humans who provoked this king first. If this king were to swallow this insult, then how would the countless sea monsters in the sea treat this king? Moreover, so many years have passed, and the powerhouses of the continent are getting weaker with each generation. Now, there aren't even many Supreme Being powerhouses. Why should I abide by that agreement? Your Highness, what do you mean? Kill. The voice sounded cold-blooded and ruthless. I've been looking for an excuse to attack the continent all these years. Unfortunately, the Supreme Beings of the continent are very cunning. This time, Turtle Demon's death may not be a bad thing, because I can use this opportunity to attack the continent. The two of you set out immediately and kill that human first. If he has companions, kill them together. Yes, Your Highness. When you kill someone, it's best to be arrogant and high-profile. Do your best to provoke the anger of the continent's Supreme Beings. Once they take action, I'll immediately gather my troops and kill them. Remember, if you force them to take action, I'll record it as a great merit. Yes, Your Highness. This is a Mother-Sun stone. Although it doesn't have much use, it has a special feature. As long as the Mother-Sun stone shatters, the Mother-Sun stone will shatter along with it. Take it with you. After you've completed your mission, immediately crush the Mother-Sun stone. I'll know the result, then gather my troops and kill them. As the voice fell, a stone shot out from the Ice Crystal Palace. Yes, Your Highness. Go, I'll be waiting for your good news. In the next moment, the two protectors of the Ice Dragon of the South Sea, Demon Shark and Fire Whale, carried an inconspicuous small stone and flew toward the Han Dynasty at an unparalleled speed. In the sea, their speed was twice as fast as when they were flying in the air. In the Ice Crystal Palace, a pure white dragon-shaped creature that looked like ice and snow was coiled up in the middle of the palace. Its eyes flashed with incomparable confidence. A bunch of foolish humans. I'd like to see if you can tolerate this. This was an open plot, an open and above-board plot. It clearly wanted to tell the other side that it wanted to attack the continent and that it was no longer willing to abide by the agreement from 10,000 years ago. But so what? If you have the ability, then continue to be a coward and let Demon Shark and Fire Whale provoke and insult you. Once you can't help but take action, then wouldn't you fall into a trap? As for Lin Feng, Huang Wenbing, and Nono, it didn't even look at them, because it was simply not on the same level as Lin Feng and the others. In its eyes, Lin Feng was just a chess piece. It was that simple. The sun slowly moved in the distant starry sky. No, it should be the earth that moved. Time slowly passed with the sun's position above their heads. How far is it? In the sky above the Han Dynasty, Lin Feng's body was already soaked in sweat. Huang Wenbing said in a deep voice, "We still have 6 hours to reach the imperial capital of Zhao." Not long after, Lin Feng asked again, "How far is it?" "There are still 4 hours left." Never before had they felt that the Cyanwood continent was actually so huge, and that this distance was so long. Every minute and every second felt like thousands or tens of thousands of years. With every breath, they felt as if they were one step closer to death. "Boss, why don't you run away by yourselves?" Huang Wenbing's heart was incomparably heavy as he pleaded. "Shut up!" Lin Feng roared. "I've never had the habit of abandoning my brothers to run for my life." Huang Wenbing was startled. He had known Lin Feng for a long time, but this was the first time he had seen Lin Feng swear. However, he felt warm in his heart. He was touched by Lin Feng's words. "Tell me, how long will it take for them to catch up?" Lin Feng's eyes were red as he gasped for breath. "About 2 hours." Huang Wenbing shook his head, throwing away his messy thoughts. At this moment, Lin Feng suddenly stopped. Nono also stopped in an instant. The huge inertia caused Huang Wenbing to almost lose his balance and hit a feather in front of him. "You guys go." Lin Feng took a deep breath. "I'll lure them away and buy you some time." You guys go north, go around the monster forest, and fly straight to the Zhao capital. Boss. Nono and Huang Wenbing's expressions changed as they shouted. Shut up. Listen to me. Lin Feng's veins were bulging, sweat dripping down his forehead into his eyes, but he didn't react at all. When you reach the Zhao capital, immediately go to the Chaoyang Palace and find Lord Black Rice, Lord Poison Eye, and Lord Killer. Tell them that I begged them to protect you. As long as the three of them are here, even if the ice dragon of the Southern Sea comes, he won't be able to hurt you. No, boss, we won't go. Yes, if we die together. You have to go. Lin Feng stared at Nono and Huang Wenbing. Their main target is me, so I can't escape no matter what. But you guys are different, you have a chance to escape. What's more, if all of you die, who's going to King avenge me? His eyes were wide open and filled with ferociousness. It was extremely frightening. Without waiting for the two to speak, he pointed ahead and roared, Go quickly. P.S. First update, begging for monthly votes. Chapter 353. Boss! Nono cried, tears streaming down its face. Lin Feng's eyes widened as he glared at it. Go! Nono roared in pain. With a flap of its wings, it instantly turned into an aurora and disappeared into the horizon. Why am I so useless? It didn't have any teeth, but its sharp beak had cut through the skin of its beak due to its extreme grief and pain. Blood gushed out like a fountain, but it didn't feel anything at all. Huge teardrops fell down one after another. I said that I would protect Boss, but in the end, Boss had to sacrifice his life to protect me. Compared to Nono, Huang Wenbing's pain wasn't any less. Although he had only known Lin Feng for half a year, he had already recognized him as his boss, and Lin Feng's actions touched him even more. If he had a choice, he would rather die himself. With endless pain and sorrow, Nono and Huang Wenbing completely disappeared from Lin Feng's sight. Whoosh! Lin Feng flew in the direction of the Great Qin Empire. His aura separated from Nono and Huang Wenbing here. Although he had decided to stay and distract the two protectors to buy time for Huang Wenbing and Nono, he wouldn't give up so easily. He couldn't give up until the last moment. The aura is getting stronger. Looks like it's not far away. Above the Han Dynasty's imperial capital, Demon Shark and Fire Whale flew past quickly. Demon Shark sped up again. Faster. The sooner we get rid of them, the sooner we can complete the mission. Fire Whale immediately caught up. You're too impatient. You'll ruin things easily. Bullsh *T. Demon Shark glared. I've done so many things for His Highness. When have I ever screwed up? Okay. Just take it that I'm wrong. Fire Whale couldn't be bothered to argue with this guy who obviously had a screw loose. But this is a serious matter. We'll act according to plan later. Don't worry, I understand. I definitely won't cause any problems for Your Highness. Demon Shark smiled confidently. Hearing this, Huijing couldn't help but feel disdainful. If it weren't for your hot temper, His Highness wouldn't have sent you to complete this task. It was precisely because the Demon Shark was born with a tyrannical, fiery, and arrogant temper that was beneficial to the plan that the Ice Dragon Palace of the Southern Sea sent him to participate in the plan. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have a part in this matter. No matter what kind of person or demonic beast it was, they all had their uses. Even if they were useless, as long as they were used in the right place, they could still produce unexpected results. Moreover, although the Demon Shark did not have any other advantages, its strength was undeniably powerful. After a short while, they all stopped. The Fire Whale frowned and said, "The auras are separated here." What a cunning human! Demon Shark said hatefully. So what if I'm cunning? The Fire Whale smiled coldly. In the face of absolute strength, any schemes and tricks are useless. The Ice Dragon Palace of the Southern Sea was a demonic beast that worshipped strength. It disdained to use schemes and tricks. Even if it wanted to use schemes, it would do so in an open and aboveboard manner. Its subordinates were naturally infected with this habit. In other words, this was a common disease of almost all demonic beasts, but it was more obvious in the Ice Dragon Palace of the Southern Sea. On the right is the aura of the human who killed the demonic tortoise. On the left is the aura of a demonic beast and another human. The fire whale thought for a moment and said, "Chase to the right, let's go." After saying that, it turned into a white light and chased after them again. There's still half an hour left. Lin Feng had consumed more than half of his yuanli, leaving him with less than 20%. His face was extremely heavy. No, if this continues, they will catch up to us sooner or later. With my strength, if they catch up to me, only death awaits me. He wouldn't pin his hopes on the illusory Earth Sage. He didn't think that his charm was enough to make an Earth Sage help him. There was no way to escape. The only thing he could do now was to increase his strength. However, how could he increase his strength in such a short time? It was impossible to comprehend the skill of law. It was also impossible to use the skill of law to strengthen his body. The time was too short. It was impossible to achieve any effect, even with the time acceleration function of space number 1. What should I do? What should I do? Lin Feng was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Calm down, calm down. Suddenly, an idea came to him. That's right, weapons and armor. Right now, there was only one way to increase his strength, and that was to refine a Supreme King weapon and a Supreme King armor. His current attack might not be able to cause any harm to a Supreme King demonic beast. However, if he had a Supreme King weapon, the result might be different. Similarly, a Supreme King demonic beast could kill him in one hit. However, if he wore a Supreme King armor, it might not be able to kill him so easily. Yes, that's it. Lin Feng made a decision instantly. Although he did not know if it would be effective or how effective it would be, he had no other choice. He could only try his best to increase his chances of success. As he flew, he released his mental strength and scanned the area below him. If he wanted to refine a Supreme King weapon and Supreme King armor, he must first find a high-quality furnace. An ordinary furnace would not be able to withstand such a huge force. Before the refining was completed, the furnace would explode. However, there was a wilderness directly below him. It was surrounded by mountains. Not to mention a high-quality furnace, there was not even a low-grade furnace used to refine daily utensils. I have to go to the city. He expanded his mental strength and quickly found a city. His speed suddenly increased as he flew toward the city. There was a high-quality furnace in the Zhao Kingdom's Chaoyang Palace, but it was too far away for Lin Feng to use. If Lin Feng could reach the Zhao Kingdom's Chaoyang Palace, why would he have to worry about the strong enemies chasing after him? After another 10 minutes, he finally reached the sky above the city. After searching carefully with his mental strength, he quickly found a furnace that met his requirement. Without stopping, he rushed down and headed for the furnace. Qingluan City was located at the border between the Han Dynasty and the Great Qin Empire. Although the armies of the Han Dynasty and the Great Qin Empire often clashed with each other and had small-scale battles, causing the surrounding area to be deserted, Qingluan City was an exception. It was very prosperous and had a shocking number of people. Although it could not be compared to the imperial capitals of the three great empires, it was not much worse. This was because a mid-level supreme martial artist lived here, and this mid-level supreme martial artist was a 6-star weapon refiner. With him here, naturally no one dared to disturb the order of the city. In addition, this mid-level supreme martial artist was very close to the people and did not have the arrogance of a supreme martial artist. He often gave lectures to many talented warriors, sorcerers, and weapon refiners. This attracted the people from the surrounding area to migrate here. People did not know the name of this mid-level supreme martial artist. They only knew that he called himself Ziyang, so people called him Supreme Ziyang, Senior Ziyang, and so on. Some people also wanted to call him Teacher Ziyang, but he seemed to be very resistant to this title and was not willing to accept disciples, so people did not dare to mention it. There was a rule for Supreme Ziyang's lectures, and that was to give lectures once a month. Warriors, sorcerers, and weapon refiners took turns to give lectures. Each lecture lasted 12 hours. This rule had been in place for many years, so long that even the people in the city could not remember it. Today was a new month of lectures, and it just so happened that it was weapon refiners' turn. At this time, on the high platform in the center of Qingluan City's central square, there was a furnace. On one side of the furnace, there was a set of exquisite weapon refiner tools and some materials. There were ordinary iron, heavy gold, and also rare materials. They were scattered on one side of the thick metal cabinet. In front of the metal cabinet, a middle-aged man's mouth was moving. He was slowly talking about something, and while talking, he was demonstrating. The flame in the furnace had been lit, the palm fire had been finished, and even the materials had been refined. It was almost time to start the refinement. Around the high platform, tens of thousands of people were sitting cross-legged, staring at the high platform without blinking. They were seriously listening, as if they were intoxicated. Some of these people were local residents of Qingluan City, but most of them came from all over the continent. There were even people from Zhao country. They were of different ages. There were old people over 100 years old, teenagers, and even children of a few years old. There were men and women, old and young. Next, I will demonstrate the refinement of spirit armor. The middle-aged man held a huge hammer in his hand. Spirit armor, as the name implies, is a spirit artifact-grade armor. Spirit armors are divided into 3 grades: 1-stripe spirit armor, double-stripe spirit armor, and 3-stripe spirit armor. Ordinary 6-star blacksmiths can only refine 1-stripe spirit armor. The more powerful 6-star blacksmiths can refine double-stripe spirit armor, and the failure rate is extremely high. As for 3-stripe spirit armor, there are only 3 blacksmiths in the world today who can refine it. Senior Ziyang, then can you refine triple-pattern spirit armor? Me? At most, I can only refine double-pattern spirit armor. The middle-aged man faintly smiled, but his words contained strong confidence. However, my success rate in refining double-pattern spirit armor is definitely not lower than the success rate of those 3 weapon refiners. In terms of weapon refinement, I admit that I am second only to those 3 top-notch weapon refiners. This was what he was most proud of. He dared to say that in the world, other than those 3 weapon refiners, no one could surpass him in the path of weapon refinement. See, Senior Ziyang is so powerful. Yes. 4th in the world, too frightening. We are too fortunate to be able to personally witness Senior Ziyang refine spirit armor. That's right, this opportunity is too rare. This old man has been waiting for decades for this day. Shu, lower your voice, don't disturb Senior Ziyang. The crowd below looked at the middle-aged man on the stage with adoring gazes, their eyes full of anticipation. They were incomparably excited, and even their breathing became hurried. The middle-aged man had a smile on his face, and under everyone's gazes, the huge hammer in his hand gently waved in the air, drawing a beautiful trajectory. Through the opening of the furnace, everyone could clearly see the changes in the materials in the furnace. But at this critical moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly sounded. Following that, the middle-aged man stopped waving the huge hammer in his hand, and looked at the sky with an incomparably solemn expression. Bang! Just as he raised his head, the figure in the sky had already landed on the ground. As the speed was too fast, he was unable to stop in time, and forcibly crushed a corner of the stage. In the dust, a blurry figure walked over, becoming clearer and clearer. It was a youth who seemed to be in a sorry state. "Friend, can I borrow your furnace for a moment?" When this young voice sounded out, whether it was the middle-aged man on the stage or the surrounding people who had come to learn weapon refinement, they were all stunned. Requesting monthly votes. It's the end of the month. Where are the monthly votes? Weapon Refining VIP Group 168605329. Weapon Refining Ordinary Group 204276549. Chapter 354. After the initial shock, the crowd exploded, expressing their strong dissatisfaction with this young man. "Who are you? Why do you want to borrow Senior Ziyang's furnace? Do you know who Senior Ziyang is? He is a 6-star weapon refiner. The 4th weapon refiner in the world. You actually want to borrow Senior Ziyang's furnace? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Let's go, don't disturb Senior Ziyang's lecture. We are still waiting for Senior Ziyang to explain how to refine a spirit armor." It seemed that Supreme Ziyang's reputation was still very high among the people. He hadn't even spoken yet, but the surrounding people were already indignant. A 6-star weapon refiner, a mid-level supreme who could refine a double-patterned spirit armor, was no different from a god in the eyes of ordinary people. Supreme Ziyang smiled faintly. "Little brother, if you need a furnace, you can go somewhere else. Qingluan City is so big, I'm not the only furnace." He already thought that the young man in front of him was looking for trouble. Although Lin Feng's speed was so fast that even he was a little shocked, he definitely wouldn't give in because of this. In front of so many people, if he really so easily lent the furnace to the young man in front of him, then where would he put his face in the future? Moreover, even if Lin Feng was a high-level supreme, or even a peak supreme, he wasn't afraid at all. It wasn't that he didn't have a trump card. "That's right, go somewhere else to find a furnace, we don't welcome you here. Senior Ziyang, let's continue, ignore this brat." "That's right, Senior Ziyang, let's continue." Everyone couldn't wait to watch Supreme Ziyang refine the double-patterned spirit armor. However, on the high platform, the youth who seemed to be in a sorry state instead shook his head. "I've already searched the entire Greenluan city, but only a furnace like you fits my criteria." He was a bit impatient. There wasn't much time left, so he couldn't waste any more time talking. "Little brother, are you joking?" Supreme Ziyang's expression became colder and colder. "Do you think this old man is easy to bully?" Lin Feng took a deep breath and said, "Time is of the essence, I have no other choice, please forgive me." As soon as he finished speaking, he let out a loud roar and instantly unleashed a punch at Supreme Ziyang at an extremely fast speed. "Be careful! Stop! Bastard!" The surrounding crowd suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Paragon Ziyang was also shocked. He had never imagined that Lin Feng would attack without warning. He hadn't been prepared in the slightest. He dodged almost instinctively, pushing his speed to the limit. The momentum of this punch was quite terrifying, and its speed was also frighteningly fast. If he was hit, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. Originally, he thought that with his speed, he wouldn't be able to escape. Who would have thought that he would actually be able to dodge and not suffer a single injury? It was only after he had flown about 30 meters away that he finally came to his senses and looked at Lin Feng with an ugly expression. Someone actually dared to attack him in his territory. This made him furious. He believed that he had a gentle personality and was always kind to others. He even had the merit of educating people. His temperament was also very good. However, as the saying goes, even Buddha gets angry. No matter how good his temper was, he couldn't stand it when someone came to provoke him. However, Just as he rolled up his sleeves and was about to go all out, Lin Feng said apologetically, "I'm sorry I offended you." The situation was urgent. Although his behavior was a bit excessive, he couldn't care less about it now. After saying that, Lin Feng no longer paid any attention to Supreme Ziyang. He squatted down and extinguished all the flames in the furnace. He even took out all the materials that had been refined and placed them on a metal cabinet at the side. "How dare you!" Paragon Ziyang was shocked and furious. This set of equipment was made by him painstakingly. It took him a few decades to piece together this set of equipment. It was the crystallization of his blood and sweat. In his heart, it was even more important than his one-mark Supreme King artifact. He wouldn't even let his friends touch it, let alone a stranger young man. This was intolerable. However, just as his right hand was placed on the sword hilt, his body suddenly trembled and he stopped moving. "That's..." He stared at the materials that appeared out of thin air on the physical metal cabinet. His voice was trembling. "Blood yellow stone, purple tail whip, rhenium gold. Precious materials, they are all precious materials." Back then, in order to refine the one-mark Supreme King artifact longsword in his hand, he had gone through untold hardships to gather the materials. He had failed several times, and even owed several people favors before he finally succeeded in refining it. Thus, his desire for precious materials was definitely not something that ordinary people could compare to. He wants to make a Supreme King artifact? Paragon Ziyang suddenly lost the desire to attack Lin Feng. But does he really have the ability to make one? It was not that he looked down on Lin Feng, but the difficulty of making a Supreme King artifact was too high. Moreover, precious materials were extremely rare. Not to mention those ordinary 6-star weapon craftsmen, even he had a high chance of failure. To be safe, he had to prepare at least 27 sets of materials and divide them into 3 attempts to make a Supreme King artifact. Only then could he succeed once. If he was unlucky, he might not even succeed once in 5 attempts. This was also because his refining ability was not bad. If it was an ordinary 6-star weapon craftsman, they might not even be able to make a Supreme King artifact after 7 or 8 attempts. However, precious materials were too rare. To gather enough materials to make 7 or 8 attempts, ordinary early-stage Supreme Beings would definitely not be able to do it. Even middle-stage Supreme Beings would have to spend a lot of effort and owe a lot of favors to be able to gather enough. 18 sets of materials is only enough for 2 attempts. Where did he get the confidence to succeed? Paragon Ziyang temporarily gave up the idea of finding trouble with Lin Feng. If Lin Feng really wanted to make a Supreme King artifact, then what Lin Feng said just now was not a lie. In the entire Azure Phoenix City, only Ziyang's set of refining tools could withstand the energy produced when making a Supreme King artifact. The surrounding people stopped their criticism and looked at each other. What is this kid doing? Is he really going to make an artifact in front of everyone? Senior Ziyang, why don't you teach him a lesson? Kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, let's see how you embarrass yourself later. After a moment of silence, everyone was dissatisfied again. There was even someone who said to Supreme Ziyang in the sky, "Senior Ziyang, teach this kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson." That's right, Senior Ziyang. You are the 4th best artifact refiner in the world. This kid who popped out of nowhere has no right to use your furnace. Lin Feng completely blocked out the voices of the outside world. He only released a little bit of spiritual energy to guard against Supreme Ziyang behind him, in case Supreme Ziyang's sneak attacked him while he was making the artifact refiner. He reignited the furnace and began to stimulate the flames. Boom! 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 That string of small flames instantly turned into raging flames that were incomparably violent. Supreme Ziyang, who had been watching this all along, opened his eyes wide. What kind of palm fire technique is that? To be able to stimulate the flames to a level that exceeded the limit in 3 breaths, this was simply a godly technique. I've really misjudged this time. Supreme Ziyang was shocked. His expression became very serious and focused. This kid is definitely a high-level artifact refiner. At least, in terms of palm fire, I, Ziyang, am far from being able to compare to him. At this moment, he no longer had any enmity towards Linfeng, nor did he blame this kid for borrowing his furnace. Not to mention other things, just this palm fire technique alone made Linfeng qualified to use his set of artifact refiner tools. He didn't even blink, afraid that he would miss a single detail. Linfeng didn't disappoint him. In just 3 breaths, he stabilized the flames again. It was simply godly. Although precious materials were difficult to refine, the flames that Linfeng stimulated were extraordinary flames. Even precious materials that were known to be incomparably tenacious were quickly refined under this transformed flame. The speed at which they were refined was not much slower than the speed at which the Earth's core flames were refined. Brilliant, this method is too brilliant. Supreme Ziyang's eyes were filled with admiration, and he couldn't help but clap his hands and cheer. On the high platform, Linfeng silently calculated the time. There were still about 15 minutes left. His head was covered in sweat, and he was extremely nervous. However, he had to control himself and not let his nervousness affect his artifact refiner. This was a huge test for him. 3, 2, 1. Begin. Linfeng observed the changes in the materials in the furnace. In the instant that the materials were completely refined, he controlled the giant hammer with his spiritual power and slowly swung it. Supreme Ziyang's eyes were burning as if he had discovered a peerless beauty. His timing is too perfect. At this moment, his initial thoughts had already begun to waver. Perhaps Linfeng wasn't just ridiculously strong in palm fire. In other aspects, he wasn't weak at all. In fact, he might even be far superior to him. Fusion technique. He stared fixedly at Linfeng as if he was admiring a peerless beauty. Although he didn't open his mouth, he was silently counting in his heart. 1 type, 2 types, 3 types. In just a few short breaths, the giant hammer drew a beautiful arc in the air. It was invisible and traceless, but it was deeply engraved in Supreme Ziyang's mind. Over 600 types. He couldn't remember how many techniques had been fused into that hammer, but he was certain that the number was over 600. Abnormal, monstrous, genius. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed his own eyes. Fusing over 600 techniques was simply inconceivable. Even the number 1 artificer of the Xingfeng Plain, Mu Wushuang, was far inferior to this young man. How did he do it? He had always thought that his artifact refining ability was extraordinary, but this ordinary-looking young man in front of him had given him a vivid lesson. Compared to Linfeng, he was far too lacking. Even comparing him to Linfeng was giving him face. He was well aware of this point in his heart. So, at this time, not only did he not resist Linfeng borrowing his furnace, but he was also very glad that he had refined this set of top-grade artifact refining tools. Otherwise, he would never have been able to witness such amazing artifact refining methods. He stared at the giant hammer above the furnace with extreme concentration, obsessively observing the invisible rules. He was intoxicated, turning a deaf ear to everything around him. The heaviness of the earth, the benevolence of the earth, the warmth of the earth. He could feel many things from Linfeng's artifact refining. At this moment, he could clearly feel that his understanding of artifact refining was rapidly rising. It had nothing to do with techniques, palm fire, and so on. It was purely his comprehension of artifact refining itself. It was a complex and difficult feeling. Although he didn't know what use it had, he firmly believed in his heart that this was his opportunity, an opportunity that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. But just as he was crazily absorbing the insights, an ear-piercing voice abruptly woke him up from that state. "Senior Ziyang, hurry up and teach this boy who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. How could he have the qualifications to borrow your furnace? Only a great artifact refining master like you has the qualifications to use such a top-grade artifact refining furnace. His behavior is simply an insult to you." The one who spoke was a young man who was dressed very well. He should be a rich family's son. His cultivation wasn't bad either, having already reached the 5th rank of Earth Warrior. In some small places, he could already be considered a top genius. Even in the imperial capital, he could be considered a first-class genius. He looked at Supreme Ziyang in a fawning manner. Seeing that his words had attracted Supreme Ziyang's attention, he immediately danced with joy. But he didn't know that his flattery had hit the wrong spot and hit the horse's hooves. Supreme Ziyang lowered his head and stared at the young man. His lungs were about to explode from anger as he roared furiously, "Shut up!" This time, the young man was so scared that his face turned pale. He was at a loss as he stared blankly at Supreme Ziyang. The surrounding people were also stunned. This was the first time in many years that they had seen Supreme Ziyang angry. "Boy, listen carefully. If even this mister isn't qualified to use this furnace, then no one in the world is qualified to use it," Supreme Ziyang said with a cold expression. "His refining ability is much better than this old man's. 10, no, 100 of this old man can't compare to him." When these words came out, everyone was shocked. One must know that Supreme Ziyang was known as the 4th best artifact refining master in the world. P.S. This is the only update in the morning. There is another update for tonight. Artifact Refining VIP Group 168605329 Ordinary Artifact. Chapter 355. There was no need to say how powerful Supreme Ziyang was. This point had already been proven by countless people. However, Supreme Ziyang said that even 10 or 100 of him couldn't compare to one Lin Feng. This was a little scary. Who was Supreme Ziyang? The people around might not know his background and identity, but they knew that he was a mid-level supreme and the 4th strongest 6-star blacksmith in the world. They couldn't imagine how terrifying 10 or 100 Supreme Ziyangs would be. Senior Ziyang wouldn't be confused because of anger, right? The people couldn't help but think. No matter what, they couldn't believe that someone could be 10 or 100 times more powerful than Supreme Ziyang. They couldn't help but look at the embarrassed young man on the high platform. However, no matter how they looked, they couldn't see how powerful this young man was. How could this kid be 10 or 100 times more powerful than Supreme Ziyang? Their eyes were full of doubts. However, Lin Feng didn't care about what they thought, nor was he in the mood to care about these problems. He was racing against time to forge the Supreme King weapon and Supreme King armor before the 2 protectors of the Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea caught up. He didn't care about anything else. In the current situation, no one could help him except himself. "Calm down, calm down." Lin Feng wiped his sweat and forced himself to calm down. Being distracted during forging was a big taboo. Although Lin Feng knew this, the situation was critical. It was impossible for him not to be nervous. He could only try his best to control his emotions and not let them affect him. Drip. Sweat flowed down his cheeks and gathered on his chin, then dripped down from the bottom of his chin. In the air, one hammer after another, the crisscrossing tracks formed an invisible pattern. Supreme Ziyang held his breath and looked at Lin Feng carefully. He was also very nervous. The people around looked at Lin Feng and then at Supreme Ziyang, each with their own thoughts. "The aura is getting thicker." Fire Whale smiled. "We'll catch up soon." Demon Shark grinned. "This kid, I'm afraid he's exhausted his origin energy and can't run anymore." The Fire Whale miraculously did not refute the Demon Shark. In fact, it also thought so. Don't be in a hurry to kill that brat later. It's best if you can lure some human supremes over first. The more the better, Hua Jing reminded. Demon Shark's blade-like fins flickered with cold light. He said impatiently, all right, I know. He complained in a low voice, Your Highness is really too much. If you want to kill someone, then just kill someone. Why do you have to make things so complicated? Although his voice was very low, his voice was not small, so it still sounded very loud. The fire whale looked at him with disdain. So you can only be His Highness' subordinate forever. Demon Shark chuckled and retorted, You're smart, but you can only be His Highness' subordinate. This sentence made the fire whale choke, and it was speechless. Phew! Phew! Lin Feng looked at the weapon that was gradually taking shape in the furnace. He became more and more nervous, and his breathing became heavier. The critical moment was about to come. Refining a Supreme King artifact was different from refining a spiritual artifact. Refining a Supreme King artifact required one more step than refining a spiritual artifact. That was, after the fusion of the skills was completed, one had to use a personal signature skill to forcefully upgrade the weapon from its original foundation by one level. Lin Feng's personal signature skill was Nirvana, which he had comprehended at the top of a mountain in the Great Qin Empire. Nirvana did not require special refining tools, but more needed to be controlled by yuan qi or mental strength. It was so that all the essence contained in the weapon would be annihilated in an instant. But in the annihilation there would be a trace of fire. As the saying goes, a single spark can start a prairie fire. As long as there was a trace of hidden fire, it would be enough to burn the whole earth. As long as there was a little hidden vitality, it would be enough to grow into a new world. The effect of the personal signature skill directly affected the effect of the weapon. Therefore, to judge the potential and refining ability of a 6-star weapon refiner, the main thing was the personal signature skill. If there was no personal signature skill, then no matter how powerful the weapon was, it could only be regarded as a spiritual weapon. The most powerful 3-mark spiritual weapon was still only a spiritual weapon, and could not become a Supreme King weapon. Supreme Ziyang could also see that the critical moment was about to arrive. He became even more nervous, and his eyes did not blink. His expression was even more focused than Lin Feng's, as if the one refining the weapon was not Lin Feng, but himself. The attitude of the surrounding people also gradually changed. No matter how much they doubted Lin Feng, they could not help but admit that when Lin Feng was refining the weapon, he really looked like a real person. From the fire in his palm to the refining process, every step gave people a feeling that they did not understand, but they felt that it was awesome. This guy can't really be that powerful, right? Now, their hearts were already shaken. The young man who had been scolded by Supreme Ziyang harbored hatred in his heart, and his heart was filled with hatred. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He admitted that he could not afford to offend Supreme Ziyang, but he did not think that he could not afford to offend the young man on the high platform. Especially when he saw the reverence on Supreme Ziyang's face, his heart burned with anger, and he had the urge to swallow Lin Feng. He had come here with untold hardships, and tried every possible way to curry favor with Supreme Ziyang, but in the end, Supreme Ziyang ignored him. When Lin Feng came, not only was he not polite to Supreme Ziyang at all, he even rudely borrowed Supreme Ziyang's furnace. In the end, Supreme Ziyang was full of reverence for Lin Feng. Why is he worthy of Senior Ziyang's respect? The more the young man thought about it, the angrier he became. As for what Supreme Ziyang said just now, he did not believe it at all. Not to mention that it was impossible, even if it was true, he was not willing to believe it. He clenched his fists, and coldly looked at the figure on the high platform. Just you wait, I will definitely expose your tricks, and prove to Senior Ziyang that I am a genius worthy of his attention. At this time, no one noticed that in the sky above Qing Luan City's central square, a black cloud had silently gathered. The nearby light gradually dimmed, but this change was very slow, so no one noticed. Only when the deafening sound of lightning came from the sky did everyone wake up. Thunder! It's going to rain? Strange, I remember that the weather was fine just now, why is there thunder for no reason? Everyone couldn't help but whisper. However, there were a few knowledgeable people who were instantly stunned. It's tribulation lightning. A white-bearded old man couldn't help but exclaim. His face was flushed red, and he was incomparably excited. He spoke incoherently. That's right, it's tribulation lightning. Although this old man has only seen it once, I definitely won't remember it wrong. This is tribulation lightning, tribulation lightning. What tribulation lightning? The people around him couldn't help but look at him in confusion and ask in a low voice. Who knew that the white-bearded old man was so excited that he didn't hear the people beside him at all. He kept repeating, tribulation lightning, in midair. Supreme Ziyang suddenly stopped breathing, and his eyes stared fixedly at Lin Feng. His signature technique. It was finally the most critical moment. If he succeeded, he would be able to forge a king artifact. If he failed, he would waste 9 sets of incomparably precious treasures and materials. At most, he would only be able to forge a spirit artifact. Using precious treasures to forge a spirit artifact was no different from completely scrapping it. Will he succeed? Supreme Ziyang murmured nervously. Right at this moment, Lin Feng moved. He stretched out both hands and put his index and middle fingers together. A stream of essence power shot out from his fingers and hit the weapon that had already taken shape in the furnace. Whoosh! His toes touched the ground, and he spun half a circle. Then, he turned his upper body and shot 2 more streams of essence power at the weapon that had taken shape in the furnace. Whoosh whoosh, this wasn't the end. He jumped and spun 720 degrees in midair. During the process of spinning, he kept shooting out essence power. At least 10 streams of essence power hit the target accurately. Supreme Ziyang was completely stunned by this scene. This is... Supreme Ziyang couldn't understand Lin Feng's actions at all. He was even somewhat angry. He's destroying the weapon's life force. Above mortal artifact, every weapon contained a faint life force. It was the essence of the weapon. Once this essence was destroyed, the weapon would lose its characteristics and all its power to rely on. It would become a piece of scrap metal at most. At most, it could only be counted as an elite artifact. It was just that it was many times harder than an elite artifact. How can he do this? Supreme Ziyang was so angry that he wanted nothing more than to rush over and kick Lin Feng away immediately. As the saying went, the eunuch was more anxious than the emperor. Wasn't this the case? Supreme Ziyang looked even more anxious than Lin Feng. Lin Feng was extremely fast. His figure flickered around the furnace. Every time he changed positions, at least 1 stream of essence power would shoot out and hit the weapon that had taken shape in the furnace. The dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated. There was no longer any trace of lightning. It was as if everything was just an illusion. Supreme Ziyang saw this, and his heart was filled with anxiety. He watched as the dark clouds dissipated until there was only a tiny bit of essence left in the furnace. There was only a tiny bit of essence left, and it could disappear completely at any time. He finally couldn't help but rush towards Lin Feng. At the same time, he shouted, "No, you can't forge weapons like this." He definitely wouldn't believe that this was his personal signature technique. After all, how could there be such a signature technique in the world? What kind of signature technique was this? What kind of signature technique was this? However, in the end, he was still a step too slow. Just as he was about to fly onto the stage, Lin Feng had already flicked out the last finger. Xiao. The weapon's essence, which was swaying like a flame in the wind, completely dissipated under the bombardment of this stream of essence power. The weapon, which had been emitting a strange light, actually lost its light in an instant. It was like a piece of scrap metal. No. Supreme Zi Yang's eyes were as round as saucers. He stopped in midair and glared at Lin Feng. Sensing Supreme Zi Yang's unfriendly gaze, Lin Feng awkwardly turned his head away, not daring to look him in the eye. He thought that Supreme Zi Yang was still angry about him forcibly borrowing the furnace just now. Meanwhile, the young man below looked at Lin Feng gloatingly. Senior Zi Yang finally couldn't take it anymore. Let's see what you can do now. Supreme Zi Yang said in an exasperated tone, how can you do this? Do you know that you just destroyed a... Before he could finish speaking, Lin Feng moved again. He put his index and middle fingers together and pointed at the furnace. A stream of essence power rushed into the furnace. At this moment, Lin Feng turned to look at Supreme Zi Yang. With a calm expression, he said, "This is Nirvana. Nirvana, Lin Feng's personal signature technique. P.S. Sorry, this one is a little late. There will be 2 more updates later." Chapter 356. Nirvana. Supreme Zi Yang was stunned for a moment. Then, he said fiercely, "I don't care what Nirvana you're talking about. Anyway, do you know that you just destroyed a Supreme King weapon? Unparalleled palm fire technique, precise timing control, terrifying fusion technique, everything seemed to be so perfect. The 9 sets of rare materials were perfectly fused together without any impurities. Then it took shape. This could be said to be the most perfect weapon embryo in the world." Supreme Zi Yang swore that this was the most perfect weapon embryo he had ever seen in his life. A weapon embryo like this could be refined into a Supreme King weapon by any 6-star blacksmith's signature technique. If he personally refined it, it could even be refined into a 2-mark Supreme King weapon. However, it was gone. The perfect weapon embryo was turned into scrap metal under the continuous bombardment of this young man's elemental energy. You wasted such a perfect weapon embryo. Simply unforgivable. Supreme Zi Yang glared at Lin Feng angrily. He wanted to swallow him alive. He seemed to have forgotten that the weapon embryo was refined by Lin Feng. He only knew that such a perfect weapon embryo had turned into scrap metal in the end. This was simply a waste of God's gift. Lin Feng couldn't understand why Supreme Zi Yang was so angry. He looked very innocent. He weakly defended himself. I didn't waste, however. Supremacy Zi Yang didn't give him a chance to explain himself. Seeing that he didn't seem to be convinced, Supremacy Zi Yang said bitterly, "Even now, you still don't know how to repent? Don't tell me that you're using your signature technique." Lin Feng really wanted to nod, but looking at Supreme Zi Yang's uncontrollable rage, he really couldn't bring himself to say it. "Take a look for yourself. The perfect weapon embryo has turned into this." Supreme Zi Yang pointed at the weapon in the furnace. As soon as he finished speaking, the furnace suddenly shone brightly. A strange, glaring light shone through the furnace and illuminated the surroundings. In an instant, everyone's eyes were fixed on the furnace. They had no idea what was going on inside the furnace. Supreme Zi Yang didn't even close his mouth. He turned his head to look. Clang, clang, a loud and clear cry came from the furnace. No, to be precise, that voice should have come from that weapon. In the furnace, a transparent shadow slowly enlarged, gradually forming an incomparably beautiful, sacred, noble, dignified, and noble demon beast image. It had the head of a chicken, the jaw of a swallow, the neck of a snake, the back of a turtle, the tail of a fish, and the 5 colors. The first inscription was virtue, the second inscription was righteousness, the second inscription was faith, and the third inscription was benevolence. This was not a demonic beast. At least, no one believed that a demonic beast could have such a shocking appearance. People were more willing to believe that this was a divine beast, a legendary divine beast. The figure was covered in golden flames. It slowly spread its wings and flapped them gently as if it was about to fly away. Supreme Ziyang and everyone else's eyes instantly widened. There were even people who couldn't help but shout, "No! Don't fly away, stay! Such a unique divine beast actually exists in this world." Supreme Elder Ziyang had never been so shocked before. It was as if even his life had been touched. Unlike them, Lin Feng's expression was a little strange, but he was not as shocked as before. He was very surprised. Although he knew that this was a fake, a shadow, and not a real life, he was still very surprised. Phoenix, it's actually a phoenix. He was very sure that phoenixes were made up by the ancient people on Earth, also known as sunbirds, but now that he saw this shadow with his own eyes, his heart began to waver. Could it be that phoenixes really exist? Clang, clang, the phoenix burning with golden flames once again emitted a loud and clear cry. Then, with a swoosh sound, it disappeared in a flash. Like glass, it shattered into pieces and turned into countless specks of light that were dazzling. Although it only appeared for a breath's time, it left a deep impression in everyone's hearts. It was only a moment, but it felt like an eternity. I understand now. Lin Feng suddenly understood something. Nirvana, Phoenix, so that's how it is. His personal signature technique was Nirvana, and according to legend, Nirvana and rebirth of phoenixes wasn't something rare. At least, it wasn't rare on Earth. Therefore, these people's signature techniques probably also explained some of the meaning of Nirvana and rebirth of phoenixes. When the phoenix's shadow disappeared, everyone felt a sense of loss, and they couldn't wait to follow that shadow. Someone slumped to the ground and murmured dejectedly, "Divine beast, where did the divine beast go?" The young man who had been gloating over Lin Feng's misfortune when Supremacy Ziyang scolded Lin Feng was now stunned. However, he then became even more envious. Why is even a divine beast looking after this kid? He was extremely aggrieved, and he shouted crazily, why is the heavens so unfair? Rumble. Shocking scenes happened one after another. As soon as the phoenix's shadow disappeared, the deafening roar of lightning came from the sky. This voice was so loud that it seemed to explode in everyone's minds. They even felt the air around them tremble fiercely. Dust flew up from the ground and was swept up by a gust of wind, causing the entire central square to be shrouded in dust. The figures of everyone around them seemed to be somewhat blurry. The only thing that was clear was the layers of dark clouds in the sky, as well as the raging lightning that flashed from time to time. Supreme Ziyang looked up, and a look of madness flashed in his eyes. "It's reborn, it's actually reborn." His face was full of disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. The dissipated dark clouds could actually be reborn, and the extinguished lightning could actually be reborn. This was simply beyond his understanding. If it was only like this, he could still barely accept it. The problem was that these black clouds were too dark, too dense, almost completely blocking the sunlight. Not even the slightest bit of light could pass through, making the green Luan city below become pitch black, as if in an instant day turned into night. And that lightning also seemed to have undergone a transformation. The originally blazing white lightning was actually dyed with a few colors, looking dreamlike and unimaginable, and the terrifying energy contained within made his heart palpitate incomparably. He was sure that if he dared to touch that lightning, any one of those lightning bolts would definitely be able to hack him into pieces. He had never seen such a lightning tribulation before. He couldn't help but lower his head and look at Lin Feng. Looking at Lin Feng's calm face, he was even more shocked. Could it be that he had already predicted this? For the first time in his life, he was scared witless by an artifact refiner, and this artifact refiner was only 22 years old. It was a pity that April Fool's Day didn't exist in the Xingfeng Plain. Otherwise, he would really think that today was April Fool's Day. This young man is too scary. Supreme Ziyang took a deep breath, and his expression became extremely solemn. When he thought of how he had berated the young man in front of him just now, he felt a wave of regret. Nirvana, he's right. This is nirvana. Such a miraculous personal signature technique really exists in this world. He made up his mind. He definitely had to communicate with the young man in front of him later. Saying that he wanted to communicate with the young man in front of him would be flattering himself. In reality, he also knew that with the young man's artifact refining ability, he was completely unqualified to communicate with him. However, since the young man had borrowed his artifact refining tools, he had to be thick-skinned and ask for guidance no matter what. If the young man refused, he would stay by the young man's side even if he had to. Whoosh! While he was thinking, the lid of the furnace burst open, and a strange light soared into the sky and flew straight into the horizon. He hurriedly collected his thoughts, and his gaze followed that strange light. He knew that it was the Supreme King artifact that Lin Feng had just refined. That's right, at this moment, he was very sure that this was definitely a Supreme King artifact. That powerful aura was even more powerful than the Supreme King artifact on his body. When that strange light flew out of the furnace, he felt the Supreme King artifact on his body actually tremble slightly. He knew that it was a feeling of fear. His Supreme King artifact was afraid and had submitted to him. Rumble! In the dense black clouds, a thick bolt of lightning struck the strange light hovering in the sky amidst the countless exclamations of the surrounding people. However, that bolt of lightning that could instantly strike even a mid-level Supreme King into smithereens couldn't do anything to that strange light at all. It didn't have any effect on that strange light at all. Whoosh! The people below were even more shocked. Supreme Ziyang, on the other hand, prayed, "You must persevere until the end, you must." He hadn't been so nervous even when he had refined his own Supreme King artifact. Boom! This time, it wasn't the sound of lightning, and it wasn't the sound of a fire being lit next to Supreme Ziyang. The fire that had been extinguished by Lin Feng was lit again by Lin Feng. Supreme Ziyang frowned, and his mind was full of question marks. Doesn't he care if his Supreme King artifact can withstand the 3 lightning tribulations? Moreover, he couldn't understand Lin Feng's intentions at all. He had clearly finished refining, so why was he still lighting the furnace? Could it be? Supreme Ziyang suddenly thought of something, and his eyes suddenly widened. Sure enough, when Lin Feng finished lighting the furnace and threw the remaining 9 sets of materials into the furnace, Supreme Ziyang finally confirmed his guess. Lunatic, he's practically a lunatic. He almost couldn't believe his eyes. His eyes widened, and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He muttered, he's actually going to continue refining. No matter how amazing a weapon refiner was, it would definitely take a lot of time to recover to refine such a perfect Supreme King artifact. In any case, it was impossible to refine another weapon in a short period of time. Even if they forcefully refined it, they definitely wouldn't be able to maintain their condition. However, Lin Feng had just refined a perfect Supreme King artifact, and he had already lit the furnace again to refine it a second time before it went through the lightning tribulations. If this wasn't a lunatic, then what was? However, before he could say anything to Lin Feng, the roar of lightning rang out in the sky again. He was at a loss. He didn't know whether to continue watching Lin Feng refine the weapon or to check the Supreme King artifact's condition in the sky. Just as he was thinking, the 3rd bolt of lightning struck down. Boom! That Supreme King artifact was like a majestic emperor, completely unaffected and unmoving. Even the light on its surface was the same from beginning to end, not dimming in the slightest. It's over. Supreme Ziyang let out a long sigh of relief. A huge rock was lifted from his heart and he looked up. Chapter 357. Qing Luan City was completely shrouded in dark clouds, falling into darkness. The lightning flashing in the dark clouds was the only light they could feel. Most of the common people, cultivators, and refiners in the city did not know what had happened. The sky had suddenly changed inexplicably, as if it was the end of the world. The sudden change made them feel terrified and uneasy. One after another, they knelt on the ground and prayed silently. A small number of knowledgeable people rushed to the central square. It must be Senior Ziyang who refined a 3-rune spiritual armor or a supreme king weapon. However, the probability of it being a 3-rune spiritual armor should be higher. They were very sure of their guess. The area covered by the dark clouds above Green Luan City was too wide, and the lightning was also too terrifying. It was far more terrifying than the appearance of a normal 3-patterned spiritual armor. As a result, it alarmed many experts in the surroundings. Leaving aside the 9th-level experts for the time being, quite a few supreme-level experts flew over with their fastest speed. Did Ziyang, that fellow, forge another Supreme King artifact? Maybe it's a 3-rune spiritual armor. No matter if it's a Supreme King weapon or a 3-rune spiritual armor, they are all rare things. Especially the 3-rune spiritual armor, that thing is much more precious than a normal Supreme King weapon. I'm afraid that Ziyang's refining ability has increased by quite a bit. Dozens of figures flew over from all over Qing Luan City, and the sound of air breaking rang out. The first to arrive was a sturdy man. He had just arrived, and before he could see the situation clearly, he laughed and said, "Ziyang, what did you refine this time?" "Ha ha ha ha. Congratulations, Ziyang. It seems like your refining ability has made quite a breakthrough. Quick, let us see if it's a 3-rune spiritual armor or a Supreme King weapon this time." Impressive, impressive. With the might of the lightning tribulation, I can see that the item you refined this time is definitely not bad. Many voices followed closely behind the burly man, and many figures hurried over. Supreme Ziyang flew over, his face full of helplessness. I also hope that it was me who refined it, but unfortunately, it wasn't me. You all guessed wrong, the one who refined the Supreme King weapon this time was not me. He pointed at Linfeng, who was in the middle of the stage. See, it was that little brother refining from the beginning to the end. I was just watching from the side. It's not you. Everyone was stunned. Then, they looked in the direction Supreme Ziyang was pointing. He saw a young man standing at the side of the high platform. His eyes were fixed on the furnace as if he was refining the materials. Normally, their relationship with Sovereign Ziyang was quite good. Therefore, they were obviously a little suspicious of Sovereign Ziyang's words. Even if you don't want to admit it, you don't have to fool us like this, right? That brat is only 22 years old, and you say he can refine a Supreme King item? The sturdy man who had spoken at the beginning was dissatisfied. This joke isn't funny at all. The few supreme martial artists around also nodded in agreement. That's right, Ziyang. Even if you want to fool us, you should find someone more reliable. Ziyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Why would I lie to you? Are there any benefits? What's more, all the people down there saw it. If you don't believe me, you can ask any of them." He pointed at the people below. "We've been friends for hundreds or even thousands of years. Do you think I need to lie to you?" Upon hearing this, the smiles on the supreme martial artists' faces slowly disappeared. The burly man's expression turned serious. "Really?" Sovereign Ziyang took a deep breath. "It's absolutely true. Moreover, his refining ability is probably 10 times, no, 100 times better than mine. I suspect that he's that mysterious Principal Lin who shook the world not long ago. Even if he's not, he must have some relationship with him. Although I don't know how old Principal Lin is, I can be sure that it's very difficult to find another person in this world who has such unfathomable refining ability." Boom! Just as he finished speaking, The deafening sound of thunder rang out in the sky. A thick bolt of lightning struck the strange light in the sky. The supreme martial artists widened their eyes. Isn't the lightning tribulation over? Who told you it's over? Sovereign Ziyang looked at their shocked expressions and found it a little funny. However, he didn't expect that his performance just now wasn't much better than these supreme martial artists. 3 bolts of lightning. I counted when I came over, the burly man said solemnly. I definitely didn't remember wrongly. Another supreme martial artist said doubtfully, that's right. I also remember that there were 3 bolts of lightning. The supreme martial artists couldn't help but look at Sovereign Ziyang. Obviously, they wanted to get an answer from him. Sovereign Ziyang smiled faintly. That's right. There were indeed 3 bolts of lightning. Then, the burly man's expression changed instantly. His voice became uncertain. This is the 4th bolt of lightning? Under their shocked gazes, Sovereign Ziyang nodded slowly. That's right. This is the 4th bolt of lightning. Wow. The supreme martial artists were shocked to the extreme. The 4th bolt of lightning. It was actually the 4th bolt of lightning. Since ancient times, in their memories, or in the ancient records, the lightning tribulation for weapons and equipment was only 3 bolts of lightning. This was determined by generations of sages and had become an unchanging truth. However, now that someone had actually broken this truth, it was no wonder that they were so shocked. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the power of a weapon that had experienced the 4th bolt of lightning would be. They looked at the supreme martial artist king weapon covered in strange light in the sky with burning eyes. They were sure that this weapon was definitely more terrifying than any of their weapons. Do you think this is the end? Sovereign Ziyang raised his head and looked at the pitch-black clouds. Look carefully. This is just the beginning. What? The supreme martial artists looked at the dark clouds in the sky in shock. They looked at the lightning that was cruising in the dark clouds. Sometimes it would flash with a glaring light, and sometimes it would let out a deafening roar. They were instantly shocked to the extreme. Boom! The blazing white lightning, with the power to destroy heaven and earth, mercilessly struck the supreme martial artist king weapon that was emitting strange light. Sovereign Ziyang counted in a low voice. The 5th bolt. The supreme martial artists beside him were also counting. The 5th bolt. The knowledgeable experts and blacksmiths who had hurried over stopped and looked at the sky in a daze. The 5th bolt. Below the high platform, an old man with a white beard said in shock, the 5th bolt. All the citizens, soldiers, merchants, cultivators, and blacksmiths of Qingluan City were also counting in silence. The 5th bolt. Even though many people didn't know what the 5th lightning bolt meant, they still counted silently. On the high platform, Lin Feng was focused on refining the materials in the furnace. This time, the materials he used to refine the Supreme King armor were the 3 pieces of the 10,000-year-old demon turtle's shell as the main material, and the other 6 parts of the more gentle treasures as supplementary materials. He wanted to refine a Supreme King armor with higher defense as much as possible. There are still about 8 minutes left. Lin Feng's breathing became heavier. I can still be faster. I can definitely do it. Right now, he was racing against the god of death. To him, time was equivalent to his life. Even if it was just a second, it could lead to a different result. 1 second before, it was life. 1 second later, it was death. He didn't notice the abnormality in his surroundings. He instinctively threw himself into refining. And the people around him, those 9th-step powerhouses and supreme martial artists, also temporarily ignored Lin Feng's existence. The entire Xianluan city had a population of 8 million, and there were also many merchants, mercenaries, and so on. Right now, there were at least 10 million people in Xianluan city. Outside of Xianluan city, there were also many villages. Adding them all together, there was at least a few 100,000 people. At this very moment, these 10 million people were all raising their heads to look at the dense black clouds and the frightening lightning in the sky. Boom! They opened their mouths at almost the same time. The sixth bolt. The sixth bolt. Supreme martial artist Zi Yang didn't even blink. Although the lightning was extremely dazzling, causing his eyes to tear up, he didn't seem to feel it. The sixth bolt. Several supreme martial artists counted. The sixth bolt. Some knowledgeable experts and blacksmiths counted. It should be over, right? That was what everyone thought. However, the dark clouds were still there, and the lightning was still surging. It was even to the extent that after a short period of rest and recuperation, the dark clouds had actually expanded by a size, and the lightning had become even more terrifying. Strands of suffocating aura came from the 30 kilometers high altitude, causing the expressions of everyone to become extremely solemn and even terrified. Even the most ordinary citizen could feel that terrifying power. It was a power that made their souls tremble. Not only did it not disappear, it became even more terrifying. Boom! A bolt of lightning suddenly struck down. Carrying a brilliant heavenly might, it was as if the whole world was split in half. The lightning tribulation was still going on. It was still going on. Everyone went crazy. What was different was that supreme martial artist Zi Yang and the others were so excited that they went crazy. They were excited and shocked, while the commoners were afraid, alarmed, and terrified. The seventh bolt. A hoarse voice sounded in every corner of Qingluan City. Almost 3 breaths later, another bolt of lightning struck down. Boom! The eighth. The fragmented voices were filled with even more shock. At this moment, even supreme martial artist Zi Yang and the others' expressions changed greatly. There was no longer any excitement. Instead, it was replaced by fear. They could feel that the energy contained in that bolt of lightning had reached an incomprehensible level. Even if a supreme martial artist faced that bolt of lightning, he would be instantly turned into ashes. If that bolt of lightning leaked out a little bit of energy, it would be enough to raise the whole Qingluan City, as well as the tens of kilometers around Qingluan City, to the ground. However, the lightning tribulation did not stop. This damned lightning tribulation was still going on. If the eighth bolt of lightning was already so terrifying, then what about the ninth bolt? If that supreme martial artist King Tool could not block it, supreme martial artist Zi Yang and the other supreme martial artists did not dare to think further. They looked at each other and saw the bitterness in everyone's eyes. If it can't block it, then all of us will be finished. This thought grew in their hearts. Once it was born, it could not be driven away. At this moment, they were no longer interested in the supreme martial artist King Tool. No treasure was more important than their own lives. If they had known that something like this would happen, they would not have come even if they were beaten to death. That sturdy man looked at supreme martial artist Zi Yang with an aggrieved gaze as if saying, "If it wasn't for you, how could we have endured such danger?" If it was another way of dying, he might be able to reluctantly accept it. However, to be struck to death by lightning was something he absolutely could not accept. Boom! When the ninth bolt of lightning struck, the supreme martial artists, as well as many other powerful existences, all closed their eyes and tightly clenched their teeth. Their entire bodies were trembling, including their souls. Under that terrifying lightning that was enough to raise a tenth of the Han dynasty to the ground, no one could remain calm. Even supreme martial artists could not. Perhaps only the legendary Earth Saints were able to ignore the existence of such power. Are we going to die? This was the first time they were so close to death. They could even smell the scent of hell. The entire Earth violently trembled under this shocking and spectacular attack. After a long time, everything returned to normal. The terrifying lightning disappeared. The power that made everyone's souls tremble disappeared. They were still alive. That supreme martial artist King Tool had successfully blocked that incomparably terrifying bolt of lightning. Supreme martial artist Ziyang and the others felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted. They let out a long sigh. Their bodies were already drenched in sweat. There was only one thought in their minds: I'm still alive. It was the joy of surviving a calamity, the joy of rejoicing. They opened their eyes. It was as if they had won a battle that they were bound to lose. A smile appeared on their faces. They wanted to raise their heads and laugh 300 times. They wanted to use their laughter to tell the world, I'm not dead. I'm not dead. Ha, ha. The sturdy man really laughed out loud. It was a carefree and unrestrained laughter. Ha ha ha. Damn it. This is the first time in my life that I've felt this way. It's so damn good to be alive. Yes, it's so good to be alive. Everyone felt the same way. They were incomparably happy. Hey Ziyang, what's wrong with you? The sturdy man looked at Supreme Martial Artist Ziyang. It's already over. Why are you still in a daze? Are you scared silly? However, Supreme Martial Artist Ziyang ignored him. Instead, he looked at the sky. His smile froze, and a look of despair appeared on his face. Seeing his expression, the hearts of the few supreme martial artists instantly thumped. It can't be. They slowly raised their head. In the next instant they were about to cry. Don't! Tens of thousands of feet high in the sky, dark clouds were like a haze that enveloped everyone's hearts. Within the dark clouds, the lightning that had disappeared just now actually gathered again. The first time had already scared them out of their wit. Even now, their bodies were still drenched in sweat. If it happened a second time, they didn't even know if they would be scared to death. F***ck. What sins have I committed in my life? The sturdy man couldn't help but curse. He was so scared that half of his soul had left him. Actually, this was also what Supreme Martial Artist Ziyang and the others wanted to ask. What sins have they committed? What sins have they committed? P.S. Monthly votes, monthly votes, monthly votes. There are only a few days left. If the monthly votes don't come out, they will go moldy. Chapter 358. There were countless people who had the same thoughts as Supreme Ziyang and the other Supreme Martial Artists. Just as the people recovered from their fear, before they could even rejoice, the terrifying dark clouds and lightning condensed once again, scaring many people to the point of crying for their parents. Ziyang, didn't you boast before that you knew a supreme martial artist? The burly man said. If you really know him, why didn't anyone come to save you in such a dangerous situation? Don't tell me he just fell asleep. Supreme Ziyang rolled his eyes. Maybe he's in seclusion? The burly man curled his lips. Forget it, you can only brag in front of us. Who said I was bragging? Supreme Ziyang was so angry that he blew his beard and glared. Let me tell you, not only do I know a supreme martial artist, I have a close relationship with him. The burly man looked impatient. Enough, can we not talk big? Supreme Ziyang glared at him fiercely and said, Do I, Supreme Ziyang, look like someone who would boast? Tell me, when have I ever lied to you? However, the burly man's words reminded him that it was time to call for reinforcements. If he really died under the heavenly lightning, it would be an unjust death. After a pause, he looked around and said to the supreme martial artists beside him, You don't believe me, right? Fine, I'll invite him over now. After saying that, without waiting for them to speak, he took out an item from his pocket. That's right, it was the Sun Mother Stone. Without thinking, he crushed the Sun Mother Stone. As for the other Mother Stone, it wasn't in his hands, but in someone else's. After crushing the Sun Mother Stone, he said to the people beside him, Wait, our reinforcements will be here soon. They wanted to escape, but with their speed, even if they were given a few hours, they wouldn't be able to escape the range of the 9 heavenly lightning. It was useless to run anywhere, so it was more reliable to find a more powerful expert to help them escape. Of course, if the supreme martial artist above could block the 9 heavenly lightning, it would be a happy ending. Really? The burly man looked at him suspiciously. Supreme Ziyang didn't bother arguing with the muscular man. Instead, he prayed in his heart, Big brother, you have to come quickly." The other supreme martial artist smiled bitterly and said, "We just came to watch the show. We didn't expect something like this to happen." "Isn't that so? This luck, Sai, it's simply too unlucky. I swear, if I encounter such a situation in the future, I won't watch the show anymore. I'll run as far as I can. It's not worth it to throw away my life just to watch the show." As they spoke, the burly man suddenly asked, "That's right, why did this guy forge 2 Supreme King items? Does he really think that he can unleash more power with just 2 king artifacts?" At the mention of this, Supreme Ziyang was also puzzled. Speaking of which, I also find it very strange. He recounted how Lin Feng had hurriedly borrowed the furnace. In the end, he frowned and said, "Looking at his appearance, he seems to be in a hurry." After refining the first Supreme King tool, he didn't stop to rest at all. Immediately after, he refined the second one. "It's really puzzling." The voice of another supreme martial artist came from the side. "Do you guys think that what he refined later on was the Supreme King armor? Old Mo, can you stop joking around?" The burly man sneered. "The Supreme King armor, only the legendary 7-star weapon refiner can." Halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped and his eyes widened. "You don't say, it really might be the Supreme King armor." Supreme Ziyang thought of this almost at the same time. He said in shock, "He's a 7-star weapon refiner?" The other supreme martial artists at the side lost their voices. 7-star weapon refiner? The craftsman saint? Although it was hard to believe, based on the current situation, it was very likely that this mysterious blacksmith was the legendary craftsman saint. Perhaps only the legendary craftsman saint would be able to successfully forge a Supreme King artifact and Supreme King armor twice in a row so easily, and even trigger the 9-stage lightning tribulation that had never been seen before. The few of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. This 22-year-old kid is actually the legendary craftsman saint? The burly man swallowed his saliva and said in a hoarse voice. No one knew if he was muttering to himself or confirming with Supreme Ziyang and the others. Supreme Ziyang took a deep breath and said, "Even if he's not the craftsman saint, he's probably not far from it." This was an objective evaluation. The others nodded. "That's right. Even if he's not the craftsman saint, he's probably at the peak of 6-star weapon refiner. Look carefully and see how many runes the Supreme King tool he refined has. If it's a 3-rune Supreme King tool, then it's almost certain that he's the craftsman saint." A bright light flashed in the burly man's eyes. The fear and timidity from before were replaced by an uncontrollable excitement. Only the craftsman saint can refine a 3-rune Supreme King tool. The others also nodded excitedly. That's right. They all looked at the sky. It's gone. No, it's not gone. It's gone through the lightning tribulation's baptism, and that mysterious weapon refiner put it away. That's right. Look, it's in his hand. Thus, the few of them immediately turned their attention to Lin Feng. No, it should be the weapon in Lin Feng's hand. The design was very simple. It was a heavy sword, the same shape as a traditional heavy sword. The only difference was that this heavy sword didn't have a sharp edge. Its surface looked dark and rough, but it was actually very smooth and flickered with a faint luster. Lightning flashed in the dark clouds, and the heavy sword reflected a dazzling light. Good sword. As a highly skilled artificer, Supremacy Ziyang was able to immediately tell that this heavy sword was no ordinary artifact. The burly man was shocked. Look, near the sword hilt. The body of this heavy sword was connected to the sword hilt, and there were no signs of artificial stitching. The sword hilt and the body of the sword were made of the same material, precious treasures. The requirements for the user were higher, but its power was also many times greater than that of an ordinary heavy sword. However, the burly man reminded everyone to look near the sword hilt. There was a mark emitting a golden light. With their eyesight they naturally saw it very clearly. That mark was the phantom of the divine beast that they had seen before. Clang, clang. Suddenly, the inconspicuous mark in their eyes seemed to be magnified countless times. It flapped its wings and flew toward them at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, it spat out a golden flame from its mouth. It was suffocating. Ah! They were instantly drenched in sweat and couldn't help but close their eyes. After waiting for a long time, the expected flames didn't appear. When they opened their eyes again, everything had disappeared. Only that mark remained quietly on the heavy sword, as if what they had just experienced was just an illusion. However, such a realistic illusion left a deep impression on them. They swallowed a mouthful of saliva and didn't dare to look at that mark again. They couldn't be sure if the illusion, just now, had become real. If they didn't die under the 9 heavenly thunders and instead died under the flames of the phantom of the divine beast, then wouldn't they have died even more unjustly? When Lin Feng flipped the heavy sword in his hand, their gazes coincidentally landed on the top of the heavy sword near the sword hilt. There were 3 lines flickering with a strange light. 3 lines. Supreme Ziyang sucked in a breath of cold air. Although he had already guessed it when he saw the 3 lines for real, he still felt a huge shock in his heart. The burly man said excitedly, "Craftsman Saint, it really is the Craftsman Saint." That's right. In their impression, only the legendary Craftsman Saint could refine a 3-line Supreme King artifact. Generally speaking, a 6-star blacksmith could refine a Supreme King artifact, but the success rate was extremely low. However, different 6-star blacksmiths had different levels of ability. The highest could reach the level of the blacksmith school's sect master, and the lowest was a 6-star blacksmith who had just entered the 6-star realm. An ordinary 6-star blacksmith would use the same amount of materials as 10 Supreme King artifacts and still find it difficult to refine a single one. However, a powerful 6-star blacksmith could increase the success rate by several times. The sect master of the blacksmith school, Mu Wushuang, could control the success rate to 100%. However, he was confident that he could refine a 1-line Supreme King artifact, but not a 2-line Supreme King artifact. Even Mu Wushuang's success rate in refining a 2-line Supreme King artifact was not much higher than an ordinary 6-star blacksmith's success rate in refining a 1-line Supreme King artifact. As for a 3-line Supreme King artifact, Mu Wushuang simply did not have the ability to refine one. Even if he was given 1,000 or 10,000 sets of precious materials, he would not be able to refine a 3-line Supreme King artifact. Moreover, precious materials were extremely rare and precious. Even with the blacksmith school's wealth, it was impossible to gather so many precious materials. Looks like our guess was right. Ziyang was content. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and clenched his fist. This mysterious blacksmith could really be the Craftsman Saint. There were some vague records of the Craftsman Saint in the history books, but there was no mention of a blacksmith who had reached this level. Therefore, in the eyes of everyone, although there were speculations about the Craftsman Saint in history, no one had truly reached this level. Now that they had seen a Craftsman Saint with their own eyes, it was no wonder that they were so excited. When an Earth Saint appears, the world shakes. When an Craftsman Saint appears, the world changes. They still remembered the description of the Craftsman Saint in the history book. It meant that when an Earth Saint appeared, the world would be shaken. This was because an Earth Saint had an earth-shattering cultivation and strength. The entire Greenwood continent could not withstand the torment of an Earth Saint expert. When an Craftsman Saint appeared, the world would change because an Craftsman Saint could refine legendary sacred artifacts, which were terrifying weapons with great power. Even if an ordinary person wielded a sacred artifact, they would be able to display extremely terrifying power. If a craftsman saint were to refine a few more sacred artifacts, it would change the situation of the world. Therefore, the status of a craftsman saint was above an earth saint. There was only one earth saint, but a craftsman saint could refine sacred artifacts and supreme king artifacts in batches, endlessly producing experts. Comparing the two, the difference between the two was obvious. P.S. First update, there are 3 more updates after this. Blacksmith VIP Group 168605329 Blacksmith Normal Group 204276549. Chapter 359. This was a mysterious blacksmith suspected to be the craftsman saint. Supreme Ziyang, the sturdy man, and the others were all shocked when they heard this. They even forgot about the dark clouds and lightning in the sky for a short moment. They even forgot that there was still a 9 heavenly lightning tribulation coming. Rumble! A deafening sound came from the sky again, pulling them back from their thoughts. Only then did they remember that there was still a Supreme King artifact or armor that was about to be baptized by the lightning tribulation. Damn it, I almost forgot about the lightning tribulation. The sturdy man cursed as he looked at the sky. His expression became serious once again. No matter how awesome the craftsman saint was, it had nothing to do with them for now. The only thing they needed to do now was to survive this terrifying lightning that made their souls tremble. It seemed simple, but it was actually extremely difficult. Moreover, under this terrifying lightning, they had no power to resist at all. They didn't even have the chance to escape. The only thing they could do was pray. Pray that the Supreme King artifact or armor could withstand the baptism of the lightning. Only then could they survive. Their lives were no longer in their control. They could only rely on luck. The lightning tribulation this time was even more terrifying than the 9 heavenly lightning tribulation from before. At the very least, they could clearly feel the terrifying aura emitted from the dark clouds in the sky. Every aura could instantly crush them into pieces. Under this majestic heavenly might, no one dared to resist. Everything submitted. People were either kneeling on the ground or bending their waists, praying to the heavens. Boom! Finally, the first bolt of lightning struck down. The energy it contained was so terrifying that even Supreme Ziyang and the others' expressions changed. Although it was only the first bolt of lightning, the energy it contained made them feel incomparably dangerous. Even if they were wearing armor, they would still be struck into pieces. This bolt of lightning was at least 10 times more powerful than the first bolt of lightning that the Supreme King weapon had received from the Thunder Tribulations. It's starting again. The hearts of everyone inside and outside Qingluan City trembled fiercely along with the descending lightning. In the skies not far from Green Luan City, 2 figures quickly flew over. However, when that streak of lightning descended, their speed indeed suddenly decreased, becoming slower and slower. Their expressions also became more and more serious. These 2 figures were the demon shark and the fiery whale, who had chased after them from the sea. What a powerful lightning tribulation! Hua Jing said in a deep voice. Someone ahead has forged a Supreme King weapon. Demon Shark sneered and said, That's good. We can take this opportunity to snatch it away. Hua Jing frowned and said, Don't think about it too simply. Although most of the powerhouses in the human world are not as strong as us, we are not invincible. Although the chance of meeting that person is very small, it's best to be careful. Perhaps it had never heard of this sentence before, but it understood this truth. Demon Shark didn't care at all. What are you afraid of? Not to mention that it's unlikely for us to encounter that guy. Even if we do, with our strength, we can still escape unscathed. You can't be thinking that his strength is strong enough to contend against His Highness, right? In any case, it's never wrong to be careful. Fire Whale did not refute, but expressed his opinion. Then, the two sped up again and flew toward Qingluan City. At the same time, in the direction of the Great Qin Empire, a person was also flying toward them. He was extremely fast, even faster than Demon Shark and the Fiery Whale when they were flying at full speed. It seemed that he was also an extremely powerful powerhouse, but his aura was hidden very well, and no one could sense his presence. This person was closer to Qingluan City, and his speed was faster than Demon Shark and the Fiery Whale. He would definitely reach Qingluan City first. What is going on? Could it be that the youngest has refined another Supreme King item? This was a young man. He looked like a young man, but his temperament contained some vicissitudes of life. There was a trace of arrogance between his brows, which belonged to a super powerhouse and a genius. Such a powerful lightning tribulation. It seems that this newly born Supreme King weapon must be very powerful. He couldn't help but be a little tempted. At first, he was still a little impatient, but after approaching Qingluan City, his attitude immediately changed. No matter what, he must get this weapon. Whoosh! He sped up a little. Ziyang, when is that Supreme King limit friend of yours coming? Seeing that the third lightning bolt had already struck and the fourth lightning bolt was still condensing, the muscular man became more and more nervous and asked anxiously. Supreme King Ziyang was also very anxious, but he did not know when the other party would arrive. He could only smile bitterly and say, "I don't know either." As they spoke, a light suddenly flashed in front of their eyes. Boom! The fourth lightning bolt struck with a loud bang. The space in the sky shattered with a crack, like fragile glass being shattered into pieces. A formless wave spread out, and that wave contained a terrifying aura made everything on the ground tremble, making all living things tremble in fear. The fourth one. Everyone was counting. They hoped that time would pass a little slower, so slow that the last few lightning bolts would never strike. But their desire was destined not to be realized, because the dark clouds were still there, and the lightning was still surging. The fourth lightning bolt? Fire Whale was overjoyed. In front of this peerless weapon, it had lost its mind. "Don't worry, as long as you get it, I will not blame you." Demon Shark smiled. Therefore, the Fiery Whale accelerated abruptly and flew below the dark clouds and the surging lightning. However, after flying for a short distance, it immediately stopped and looked at the dark clouds and lightning in horror. How is it possible? How can the power of the lightning tribulation be so terrifying? Because at this time, the lightning condensed in the sky even made it feel a great threat. It was sure that if it dared to go over, it would be seriously injured by the lightning. "Now you know why I am not in a hurry?" Demon Shark said sarcastically. It was very happy because this was the first time it had the upper hand in front of Fire Whale in so many years, although it was only a verbal advantage. Humph! Fire Whale snorted coldly, but did not refute. Soon, the fifth lightning bolt fell and hit the strange light. Boom! At this moment the earth was trembling, the sky was howling, and the world fell into a dead silence. The power of this heavenly thunder was strong enough to kill a human at the peak of the Supreme Master level and seriously injure a demonic beast at the peak of the Supreme Master level. However, all of this was not over. After a few breaths, the sixth lightning bolt fell as expected. Boom! The earth was trembling, and so were the people's hearts. Demon Shark and Fire Whale, the two demonic beasts at the peak of the Supreme Master level, were also trembling. The power of this heavenly thunder made their hearts palpitate. They were sure that if this heavenly thunder were to hit them, it would definitely kill them instantly and turn them into dregs. However, just when they thought that the sixth lightning bolt was the last one, the lightning in the dark clouds did not dissipate. Instead, it condensed and became purer, emitting waves of terrifying power. That was the majestic heavenly might, representing the will of the heavens. If that heavenly thunder were to hit the ground, It was estimated that half of the Han dynasty's land would be destroyed. Soon, the seventh lightning bolt fell from the sky. Boom! The people below could not help but close their eyes. Their hands and feet were cold, and their bodies were trembling. Demon Shark's face no longer had the mocking expression, but was replaced with fear. Retreat! Demon Shark and Fire Whale flew away from Qingluan City at almost the same time. Even though they knew that there was a powerful treasure in front of them, they still did not have the courage to go over. Because they were not sure if they would be struck into dregs by the lightning when they fought for the treasure. When they did not know how far they had retreated, the eighth heavenly thunder also fell. Large pieces of space were shattered, forming a wide path of nothingness. The heaven and earth were filled with a kind of aura of destruction, as if doomsday had arrived. Countless supremes, ninth-stage powerhouses, eighth-stage powerhouses, blacksmiths and others were startled. They raised their heads and looked at the rolling lightning in shock. Qingluan City. Supreme Zi Yang's voice trembled. This heavenly tribulation is much more terrifying than before. The muscular man said, "This is the last heavenly thunder. If that Supreme Being King Tool cannot block it, I'm afraid that the entire eastern part of the Han dynasty, the western part of the Great Qin Empire, and the southern part of the Zhao country will be razed to the ground." A destructive aura shrouded the land. Whether it was the weak commoners, ordinary cultivators, blacksmiths, powerful supremes, or even supremes, at this moment, everyone was suffocating. "Run, run for your life!" Fire Whale let out a sharp cry of fear. Demon Shark instinctively turned around and ran away from Qingluan City with the fastest speed in his life. This time, their minds were blank. They only had one thought: run. No matter how embarrassing it was, they did not care. As long as they could escape, it was enough. This was because the aura that permeated the air caused even their souls to tremble, causing their hearts to palpitate in fear. They believed that even if His Highness Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea was here, he could only run for his life. There was no other choice. That heavenly thunder had not yet struck, but it had already made them so scared. Once it struck, it was easy to imagine how terrifying its power would be. This piece of land had become a small boat in the sea. Once the Supreme Being King armor in the sky could not block it, then, with Qingluan City as the center, dozens of large cities would be razed to the ground in an instant. Trees, mountains, rivers, deserts, cities, humans, demonic beasts, animals, and so on, everything would be annihilated and turned into nothingness. Kacha! The sound of something breaking rang in people's minds. That was the sound of space exploding. A glaring light flashed at the entrance of the black hole formed by the space explosion, illuminating the ground. It was so bright that it was even brighter than daytime. P.S. There will be 2 more updates later. Requesting votes. Chapter 360. After brewing for a long time, the 9th bolt of lightning finally descended. Unlike the previous 8 bolts of lightning, this bolt of lightning scared everyone out of their wits the moment it appeared. Even the Demon Shark and Fire Whale, the 2 ultimate Supreme Being demonic beasts, and the ultimate Supreme Being experts summoned by Supreme Ziyang, were so scared that they covered their heads and ran away. They didn't even care about their dignity as ultimate Supreme Being experts. It was too scary. The 9th bolt of heavenly lightning had turned into a world-destroying lightning bolt. In the face of this supreme lightning bolt that carried boundless heavenly might, not to mention a peak Supreme Being, even if there were 10 or 100 of them, they would be smashed into smithereens upon contact. No one doubted this, and no one dared to take any chances. Between treasures and their lives, the 3 ultimate Supreme Being experts all chose the latter. This was also the instinct of life. Finally, everything was over. The dark clouds dispersed, and the lightning disappeared. Rays of sunlight shone on the ground again, but the lightning aura in the air didn't dissipate for a long time. Swish! In the center of Qingluan City, a figure instantly flew up into the sky. It was Lin Feng. He grabbed the Supreme King armor and quickly tore off the three-striped spiritual armor on his body. Then, he put on the Supreme King armor. After that, he finally had time to observe the Supreme King armor on his body. On the collar, 2 phoenix imprints shone with golden light. On the right side of his chest, 3 perfect lines shone with a strange light. 3-striped Supreme King armor. Lin Feng had successfully refined the legendary 3-striped Supreme King armor. Feeling the powerful energy circulating in the 3-striped Supreme King armor, Lin Feng was pleasantly surprised. What a strong defense! Although it hadn't been tested, Lin Feng was sure that the defense of this 3-striped Supreme King armor was at least 10 times stronger than the 3-striped spiritual armor he wore before. This was a Supreme King armor that had been baptized by the apocalyptic lightning tribulation. It had the most terrifying defense among all the Supreme King armors. Even if my physical body hasn't been strengthened, with just this 3-striped Supreme King armor and my origin energy, ordinary Ultimate Supremes won't be able to hurt me at all. Lin Feng took a deep breath as a strong sense of confidence welled up from the bottom of his heart. A demonic beast at the peak of the Supreme Being realm can only injure me. Within 1,000 moves, even a demonic beast at the peak of the Supreme Being realm cannot take my life. Even without any evidence, Lin Feng was extremely confident that even if he were to face a demonic beast at the peak of the Martial Saint realm, he would still have the ability to go all out. This was because not only did he have a 3-rune Supreme King armor, he also had a 3-rune Supreme King weapon. He gripped the black heavy sword in his hand, and a thick and familiar feeling welled up in his heart. This 3-mark Supreme King artifact had increased his attack power by more than 3 times. Whether it was attack power or defense power, the current Lin Feng couldn't be compared to an hour ago. His original attack power was enough to kill ordinary Ultimate Supreme Being and high-level Ultimate Supreme Being demonic beasts. Now that his attack power had increased by 3 times, he was able to threaten Ultimate Supreme Being experts and ordinary Ultimate Supreme Being demonic beasts. If he were to hit their weak points or wounds multiple times, he could even take their lives. Of course, if his opponent was the Ice Dragon of the Southern Sea, Lin Feng would still run as far as he could. An Ultimate Supreme Being Divine Beast's attack power was close to that of an Earth Sage expert. Although it was still far from that level, it could almost be considered the strongest among the Supreme Being experts. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was the strongest person below the Earth Sage level. Maybe this time, I can really hold on until Lord Black Rice and the others come to save me. Lin Feng took a deep breath, and a glimmer of hope grew in his heart. Below, Supreme Ziyang, the burly man, and the others came to their senses one by one. When they saw Lin Feng floating in the air, holding a 3-rune Supreme King artifact, and wearing a 3-rune Supreme King armor, their eyes couldn't help but be filled with endless envy and jealousy. However, they still had some self-awareness, and didn't think of snatching it by force. They were very clear that Lin Feng, who had a 3-rune Supreme King artifact and a 3-rune Supreme King armor, even if he was just a beginner Supreme Being, had the strength to defeat them. Snatching the 3-rune Supreme King artifact and the 3-rune Supreme King armor was tantamount to courting death. On the peak of a mountain outside Qingluan City, Demon Shark and Fire Whale were panting, and they were still in shock. They looked in the direction of Qingluan City in fear. However, when they saw the dark clouds and lightning disappear, and saw the surrounding land shrouded in sunlight, they immediately came to their senses. "Let's go!" Demon Shark and Fire Whale didn't hesitate at all, and they flew toward Qingluan City. "Supreme King Artifact, I'm coming." Compared to the murderer of the 10,000-year turtle demon, they naturally felt that a Supreme King artifact that had undergone the baptism of 9-stage lightning tribulations was more important. Moreover, the murderer was also in this direction, so they naturally didn't need to hesitate. On the other side of Qingluan City, the ultimate supreme being who had escaped also came to his senses, and he turned his head and rushed toward Qingluan City again. His eyes were filled with greed. Supreme King Artifact, a Supreme King artifact that had undergone the baptism of 9-stage lightning tribulations. Although he already had a Supreme King artifact, there were still differences between Supreme King artifact. There was a huge difference between a powerful Supreme King artifact and a low-level Supreme King artifact. If he had this Supreme King artifact, he was sure that he could even kill the Southern Sea Ice Dragon, who was known as the Demon Clan's #1 expert below the Earth Sage realm. Whoosh! His figure turned into a flowing light, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared. In about half a minute, this young ultimate supreme being expert had arrived at Qingluan City. Big Brother! Supreme Ziyang had been paying attention to the situation in the sky. When he saw the young man's figure, he immediately shouted, "I'm here." The young man was originally flying toward Linfeng, but when he heard Supreme Ziyang's voice, he frowned and reluctantly changed his direction, flying toward Supreme Ziyang. "Big Brother, you're finally here." Supreme Ziyang let out a long breath. "I don't know if you saw that bolt of lightning just now, but it was too terrifying." The young man said indifferently, "Mo Ziyang, remember, you're a member of our Mo clan. You can't tarnish our Mo clan's image because of a mere bolt of lightning." Only the heavens knew how pitiful it was for him to escape when he felt the terrifying aura of lightning. Supreme Ziyang explained, "It's not my fault, it's that bolt of lightning that really, I know." The young man waved his hand, interrupting Supreme Ziyang's words. "All right, let's not talk nonsense. Why did you break the stone? Tell me." Supreme Ziyang was a little unwilling, but under the pressure of the young man, he had no choice but to tell him everything that had happened. In the end, he said, "I just wanted to ask Big Brother to save us, but luckily, that Supreme King armor blocked the lightning, otherwise we—" He didn't continue, because when he thought of the consequences, he was incomparably terrified. The young man thought, just now, it was a 3-striped Supreme King armor that went through the baptism of lightning? Even he didn't notice that his voice was trembling slightly. Yes, the first one was a 3-striped Supreme King weapon, and the second one was a 3-striped Supreme King armor. If I remember correctly, he took your weapon without your permission, right? A smile appeared on the young man's face. Yes, is there a problem with that? Supreme Ziyang looked at the young man, puzzled. The young man said with a trace of deep meaning, "No, there's no problem at all." He patted Supreme Ziyang's shoulder. "You did well." He finally had a reason to make a move. Even if someone questioned him afterwards, he could use it as an excuse to make others speechless. Suddenly, he raised his head and a light flashed in his eyes. His expression also became more serious, demonic beasts at the peak of the Supreme King level. As soon as he said this, Supreme Ziyang, the sturdy man, and the other Supremes beside him were shocked, and they all raised their heads to look at the sky. 2 demonic beasts at the peak of the Supreme King level are here to snatch the weapon and armor? The young man frowned deeply, and then he laughed. "Fine, I'll let you fight with this guy first. When you're tired, it'll be my turn." He was very willing to be a fisherman who benefited from it, or be the oriole who watched the mantis stalk the cicada. Linfeng's mind was highly focused, and he looked at the 2 figures that were flying at high speed vigilantly. The hand that was holding the heavy sword clenched, the 2 protectors of the ice dragon of the Southern Sea. Demon Shark Protector, a demonic beast at the peak of the Supreme King level. Fire Whale Protector, a demonic beast at the peak of the Supreme King level. It's actually this guy. When they saw Linfeng, Demon Shark and Fire Whale were also surprised, but after the surprise they became excited. This is even better. If we kill him, we can not only complete the task given by His Highness, but also get the Supreme King weapon. Wait, what is that? When they saw the heavy sword in Linfeng's hand and the armor on his body, their eyes almost popped out. 3-stripe Supreme King weapon, 3-stripe Supreme King armor. No wonder the Thunder Tribulation array was so terrifying. Go. At this time, Demon Shark's mind was only filled with the 3-striped Supreme King weapon and the armor. Without thinking, he directly rushed over, intending to take down Linfeng as soon as possible and snatch the items. Fire Whale was afraid that Demon Shark would take the lead, and the moment Demon Shark made a move, he also immediately burst out with extreme speed. Their eyes flashed with greed, and they did not put Linfeng in their eyes at all. Linfeng had already entered a state of battle, and his powerful battle consciousness dominated his body, controlling every part of his body. This was the most difficult battle in his life, and also the most powerful enemy he had encountered so far. Afraid? A little. But more than that, he was excited and hot-blooded. How heroic was it to challenge the 2 protectors under His Highness Ice Dragon of the South Sea alone? How many people in the world had such courage? Although Linfeng was forced to do so, it was undeniable that he already had the strength to fight with demonic beasts at the peak of the Supreme Realm. With the heavy sword in his hand and the armor on his body, he looked like a majestic god of war. His face was resolute, and there was no trace of fear. Instead of retreating, he rushed toward the 2 protectors. His speed was slower than the 2 protectors, but his battle consciousness was much more terrifying than the 2 protectors. Ha! He shouted and slashed the heavy sword at Demon Shark Protector, using the power law of the hybrid law. This sword was like a mountain, and the space suddenly collapsed. Ha ha ha! Just in time. Demon Shark Protector beamed with joy, without the slightest fear. It was as if he had seen his prey fall into a trap. He opened his mouth and bit at Linfeng. Those pure white sharp teeth emitted a stench of blood, and under the sunlight, they reflected a chilling light that made one's heart palpitate. Linfeng saw that Demon Shark Protector did not dodge, and he was delighted. When the hybrid law was about to hit Demon Shark Protector's teeth, he suddenly changed into his only ultimate skill, the Wrath of the Earth. This kid, he actually ignored my attack. Is he looking down on me? At the same time, Fire Whale was furious and launched an even fiercer attack. P.S. There are only 2 days left. Let's go. Chapter 361. The Fire Whale Protector's huge tail whipped towards Linfeng. The Fiery Whale Protector's body was huge. Although its tail was slightly smaller than its body, it was still like a small mountain. Coupled with the terrifying strength of a peak Supreme Being demonic beast, its physical attack power was extremely terrifying. If it was hit, even a large city would be razed to the ground. However, Linfeng was already riding a tiger and couldn't back down. Moreover, he had finally found an opportunity to attack the Demon Shark Protector, so he wasn't willing to give it up. Clenching his teeth, he continued to attack. Law Fusion Technique, Earth's Wrath. The Demon Shark Protector didn't know how strong Linfeng's attack power was. However, Linfeng was a human junior supreme being after all, so he was very deceptive. Coincidentally, the Demon Shark Protector was deceived by Linfeng's cultivation. It believed that no matter how powerful Linfeng's attack was, it wouldn't be able to hurt it. It must be known that it was a super powerhouse that could even ignore the attacks of peak Supreme Being. It wasn't a soft-footed shrimp like the 10,000-year turtle demon. Even if it stood still and let the other party hit it for a lifetime, the other party wouldn't be able to hurt it. This time, it didn't dodge, and there was no need to dodge. Its sharp teeth bit down towards Linfeng. For the Demon Shark Protector, its strongest defense and strongest physical attack were its teeth, just like the Fire Whale Protector's tail. Therefore, it had great confidence in its attack this time. Not to mention a human junior supreme being, Even a peak supreme being would be bitten to death by it. A smile flashed in its eyes. It seemed to have already seen Lin Feng being bitten to death, and the scene of it obtaining the 3-striped Supreme King artifact and 3-striped Supreme King armor. Damn it! The fire whale was furious. He cursed Lin Feng countless times in his heart. Why is it? Why are you attacking it and not me? In their eyes, Lin Feng was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Any one of them could easily kill Lin Feng and take his 3 runes Supreme King weapon and armor. Therefore, whoever was closest to him had a higher chance of obtaining them. Therefore, they all hoped that Lin Feng would attack them. That way, they would be able to kill Lin Feng and obtain the treasure. Even the extreme Supreme Youth thought the same. He cursed in his heart, "Idiot!" He originally thought that Lin Feng would be able to hold on for a while, but he didn't expect that Lin Feng couldn't even handle the first move. He had already made preparations. Once Lin Feng was killed, he would immediately make his move and kill the 2 demonic beasts before they could react. Although it was a little risky, it was all worth it for the 3-striped Supreme King artifact and 3-striped Supreme King armor. The 3-striped Supreme King artifact was nothing, but the 3-striped Supreme King armor was a treasure that even an Earth sage desired. Since he had already seen it, how could he miss it? Sigh. Supreme Ziyang and the muscular man couldn't help but sigh. Was the legendary craftsman saint going to die in the hands of demonic beasts? However, was that really the case? The wrath of the earth versus the teeth that contained the essence of the demon shark revered protector's flesh. Be angry, earth! Lin Feng held the heavy sword with both hands and slashed down with great force. Veins popped out all over his body, and his hair danced in the wind. The 3-striped Supreme King armor on his body fluttered in the wind. Boom! The space around the heavy sword shattered as if it was made of paper. In the next moment, the heavy sword collided with the teeth of the demon shark revered protector. The scene froze at this moment and time stopped flowing. Everyone's gaze and demonic beasts was focused on this point. Then, the stop time seemed to slowly return to normal. The demon shark revered protector's face slowly changed. Its human-like smile disappeared and was replaced by pain and anger. Under the heavy sword's slash, dozens of cracks appeared on the sharp teeth that reflected a cold light. Those cracks became more and more obvious, and the gap became bigger and bigger. Finally, it exploded with a bang. Ah! The demon shark revered protector painfully roared as it rolled in the air. Its miserable cry was like thunder that resounded through the entire Qingluan city. One of the sharp teeth that it was most proud of was missing. Only a small fragment of the tooth remained connected to the skull. Scarlet blood flowed out from the hole in the middle of the tooth fragment like a spring. It was like a downpour. At the same time, Lin Feng instinctively increased his speed to the extreme and dodged to the side. Even so, the tail of the fiery whale revered protector still hit his back. Fortunately, it was only a graze and he wasn't hit directly. Pah! A crisp sound came from the place where Lin Feng was hit by the tail of the fiery whale revered protector. The fiery whale revered protector's face changed. He actually dodged it. The result of the short exchange was out of everyone's expectations. Lin Feng fought 2 peak supremes under the Southern Sea Ice Dragon revered protector alone. In the end, Lin Feng gained the upper hand. The demon shark revered protector was injured, and the fiery whale revered protector lost. The peak supreme's youth who was about to rush out suddenly stopped and frowned. This kid is definitely hiding his cultivation. It was impossible for a peak supremes to have such a strong fighting strength. Only a peak supremes could have such an attack power that could shatter the teeth of the demon shark revered protector. He admitted that he had underestimated Lin Feng. However, that was all. If they really fought, he didn't think that Lin Feng would be his opponent. 10 moves, at most 10 moves. He was confident that he could kill Lin Feng. Different Peak Supreme martial artists also possessed different combat powers. Just like Peak Supreme's demonic beasts and Peak Supreme's divine beasts. Big brother, quickly go and save this person. Supreme Ziyang said anxiously. No matter what, he's a human. Moreover, he's suspected to be a craftsman saint. We can't let him die in the hands of two demonic beasts. He wanted to make a move, but his strength was too low. Not to mention helping, it would be good enough if he didn't drag Lin Feng down. The only person who could help Lin Feng here was his big brother, who was at the peak of the martial saint realm. The youth glanced at Supreme Ziyang and said, "Don't worry, I'll do it, but now isn't the time." It was necessary to do it, but the targets weren't two Peak Supreme's demonic beasts. The next battle between Lin Feng and the two protectors was even more disadvantageous for Lin Feng. The furious demon shark revered protector and fire whale revered protector began to attack Lin Feng crazily. However, they didn't dare to underestimate Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng didn't have the ability to kill them in one blow, his attack power couldn't be underestimated. If they were hit in a weak point, they might die instantly. Even if they weren't hit in a weak point, they would still die if they were hit too many times. The two protectors' laws and physical strength were used together. Coupled with the huge amount of yuan energy in his body, he immediately displayed a terrifying fighting strength. Under the joint attack of the demon shark revered protector and fire whale revered protector, Lin Feng could only dodge again and again. He was like a small boat in the sea, trying to find a way to survive the torrential waves. Peak Supreme's demonic beasts are indeed powerful. Lin Feng reflexively dodged the attacks with a heavy heart. Although he had a 3-mark Supreme's King artifact and 3-mark Supreme's King armor, he could at most fight a Peak Supreme's demonic beast to a draw. If there was another one, he wouldn't have the strength to fight back. Not to mention taking the initiative to attack. Even dodging the attacks of the two protectors was difficult. Bam! Once again, he was sent flying by the demon shark revered protector's body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face became even paler. How many times had he been hit? He didn't count, but he knew that the number of times he was hit wasn't small. Facing two opponents who were faster and more experienced than him, he didn't have the slightest advantage. Only 15% of my yuan energy is left. Lin Feng was getting more and more anxious. Although he recovered a bit of his yuan energy when he was refining, it wasn't enough. Moreover, every time he was injured, he needed a portion of his yuan energy to suppress his injuries. The two protectors, Supreme Ziyang, the burly man, and the others, as well as the 9th and 8th stage experts, all widened their eyes as they watched Lin Feng fall like a kite with a broken string. Mo Zishang. Supreme Ziyang almost roared. I asked you to save him, not kill him. His voice was filled with fury. This was a mighty existence suspected to be a craftsman saint. How could he die in the hands of a fellow human? The young man, who had succeeded in his sneak attack, said indifferently, but I'm not interested in saving him. I only want to kill him. If he killed Lin Feng, then he would be the only person in the world with a 3-striped Supreme King artifact and a 3-striped Supreme King armor. He didn't think there was any meaning in Lin Feng's existence. Despicable human. The two protectors were also burning with anger. They had worked so hard for so long, but in the end, someone had taken advantage of them. However, Mo Zishang didn't care about their thoughts. His figure flashed, and he chased after Lin Feng, leaving only one sentence. When I get the 3-striped Supreme King artifact and the 3-striped Supreme King armor, I'll come back to deal with you. His words were full of confidence, and he didn't take the two protectors seriously at all. P.S. It's 6 o'clock. I can't hold on anymore. Sleep. Requesting monthly vote. Chapter 362. Emo Zishang's figure flashed, leaving an afterimage in the sky as he chased after Linfeng. Kid, stop! The demon shark and fire whale protectors shouted at the same time. Emo Zishang. Supreme Ziyang also exclaimed, stop! But Emo Zishang didn't pay attention to them. He pushed the speed of a peak supreme to the extreme. Compared to the demon shark protector and the fire whale protector at their peak, he was 30% faster. He seemed to have become a beam of light. Even ordinary supreme powerhouses would find it difficult to track his movements. Whoosh! He fell from the sky. Lin Feng's eyes were closed, and his mouth was slightly open. Streams of blood flowed out from the corners of his mouth. He seemed to have fainted, and his limbs hung down naturally. His whole body was falling at an astonishing speed, and his shiny black hair fluttered in the wind. Ha 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 ha! Die! Emo Zishang laughed crazily. He clenched his fist and punched at Linfeng. Supreme Ziyang, the burly man, and the others couldn't help but close their eyes. They couldn't bear to see this scene. The craftsman saint, the legendary craftsman saint, was he really going to die here? The demon shark and fire whale protectors were extremely upset. They had worked so hard to force Linfeng to the point of exhaustion, but in the end, a human had taken the lead. This was unforgivable. My three-striped Supreme Being King artifact and armor. Their eyes were red. They were crazily red. Emo Zishang was getting closer and closer to Linfeng. His fist seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. A terrifying Yuanli turned into fist force that fused with the power of the precept. Wherever his fist passed, the space shattered, forming a void that looked like a black hole. A smile appeared on his face because the three-striped Supreme Being King artifact and armor were about to be in his hands. 100 feet, 200 feet, 100 feet, 15 feet, 30 feet in the blink of an eye. He was only 10 feet away from Linfeng. The excited smile on his face became clearer. Everyone closed their eyes. They couldn't bear to see Linfeng die. He didn't die in the hands of the demon race, but in the hands of a human. How ironic! However, just as everyone thought that Linfeng was definitely going to die, Linfeng suddenly opened his eyes. A glint flashed from his black gem-like eyes before disappearing. Emo Zishang suddenly looked surprised. His heart inexplicably thumped. He had a bad feeling. Linfeng's lips curled into a beautiful arc. It was a mocking smile. Without any hesitation, when Emo Zishang was only a step away from him, he suddenly used the ultimate move he had prepared. Earth's Fury! Emo Zishang wanted to dodge or adjust his position, but it was too late. He was only 10 feet away from Linfeng. With his speed and strong inertia, it was impossible for him to stop immediately. Moreover, Linfeng had already slowed down his fall. This made the distance between them shrink even faster. In an instant, Linfeng held the three-striped Supreme Being King artifact and slashed upwards. The three-striped Supreme Being King artifact in his hand suddenly flashed with a strange light. A heart-palpitating power suddenly erupted. That power was like a monstrous torrent. It was like the source of an explosion. It was thunderous and unstoppable. Bang! Crack! Emo Zishang's crazily falling body started from his fist and extended to his arm. Inch by inch, his flesh was badly mangled. His body was forcefully slashed back by this terrifying power. Emo Zishang screamed. His head was instantly covered with beads of sweat. It was painful and miserable. Although Emo Zishang was seriously injured, Linfeng was still a little disappointed. What a pity! He glanced at the sky with regret. Finally, he'd exhausted his last trace of origin energy, and even the last trace of origin energy in his limbs and bones had been exhausted. He'd severely overdrawn his body's potential, causing his injuries to become even more serious, and he swayed as he fell down. Emo Zishang's screams woke everyone up. When they opened their eyes, they saw an unbelievable scene. They never thought that Linfeng had faked his death. When Mo Zishang was approaching Lin Feng, he did not hesitate to launch a counterattack. This counterattack was so fierce that even Mo Zishang, who was at the peak of the Supreme Being peak, was seriously injured and lost an arm. Bang! Lin Feng's body finally hit the ground. Fortunately, he was not far from the ground. When he suddenly slowed down his fall, it also reduced the impact. Coupled with the protection of the 3 Supreme Being King armor, he did not fall to his death. Even so, his injuries were a little more serious. Although he was not dead, it was not much better than being dead. He was now exhaling more than he was inhaling. His eyes were slightly open and he was half conscious. His eyes were rolled up and he was not far from death. Ah! Bastard, I'm going to kill you! Mo Zishang was so angry that he was about to go crazy. When he shouted these words, he spat out another mouthful of blood and could not help but cough. Cough, cough. Cough, cough. The demon shark revered guardian and fire whale revered guardian looked at each other. They immediately understood the meaning of each other's smile. Without any hesitation, their huge bodies suddenly turned into 2 afterimages and rushed to the ground where Lin Feng had fainted. 3 runes Supreme Being King weapon and 3 runes Supreme Being King armor. This was their only target. As for Mo Zishang, they naturally bore a grudge against him. However, compared to the 3 Supreme Being armor and the 3 Supreme Being weapon, Mo Zishang's importance was far less than the latter. Moreover, they could totally snatch the weapons and armor before dealing with Mo Zishang. Otherwise, if another expert came out of nowhere, they would really cry. Although Mo Zishang was severely injured, he had sufficient yuan power in his body. He forcefully suppressed his injuries and swooped down. Mine, all of them are mine. His face was filled with madness. When he burst out with his full speed, he actually surpassed the demon shark revered guardian and fire whale revered guardian by 20 to 30%. Although he was a little slower, the distance between him and the demon shark revered guardian and fire whale revered guardian was constantly shrinking. The demon shark revered guardian, fire whale revered guardian, Mo Zishang, these 2 demonic beasts and a human were all fighting to get to Lin Feng. Swish! 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 3 streams of light suddenly flashed from the sky. In the next moment, they appeared less than 10 feet away from Lin Feng. Their eyes flickered with excitement as their hearts were filled with incomparable excitement. 3 Supreme Being weapon, 3 Supreme Being armor. Even an Earth sage was tempted. This crazy item was about to fall into their hand. How could they not be excited? How could they not be? This time, he's really finished. Supreme Ziyang, the burly man, and the others couldn't help but sigh as this thought popped up in their minds. Yes, under such circumstances, no one believed that Lin Feng could survive. 2 Supreme Being demonic beasts and a peak Supreme Being expert. With these 3 peerless experts joining forces, other than an Earth sage, they couldn't think of anyone who could contend against them. Even the renowned ice dragon of the Southern Sea wouldn't have it easy, right? Accidents always came unexpectedly, especially when it came to Lin Feng. Accidents and miracles could happen at any time. Just when everyone thought that Lin Feng was dead for sure, a furious voice rang in everyone's ears. Stop! That voice was like a thunderclap, deafening everyone's ears and making them dizzy. Naturally, the demon shark revered protector, fire whale revered protector, and Mo Zishang wouldn't stop there. At this point, they were about to obtain the treasure. How could they stop? Courting death. Seeing that the demon shark revered protector, fire whale revered protector, and Mo Zishang didn't stop and instead increased their speed, the owner of the voice was instantly enraged. He snorted coldly as a huge fist shadow suddenly appeared beside the demon shark revered protector and the others. The terrifying fist force blasted the 3 of them away. Pfft! Under this fist force, the 3 of them didn't have the slightest ability to resist. They were like 3 rubber balls that were almost blown apart. For a moment everyone was stunned. Was this still the limit of a Supreme Being? 2 Supreme Being demonic beasts and a peak Supreme Being expert couldn't even block a single punch from this mysterious expert. They looked up into the sky, searching for this mysterious man. After a few breaths, a few figures appeared in the sky. Linfeng forced his eyelids open and said in a weak voice, "You guys are finally here." After saying that, his head tilted and he fainted completely. "Boss! Boss!" 2 exclamations sounded in the sky as 2 figures rushed down at the same time. The other 3 instantly disappeared and appeared beside Linfeng. The ugly, short, middle-aged man who was the leader checked Linfeng's injuries. His face immediately turned gloomy as he roared in anger. Who hurt him like this?" As soon as he finished speaking, his gaze swept across the demon shark Honorable Protector, fire whale Honorable Protector, and Mo Zishang, who were sent flying by his punch. The demon shark Honorable Protector, fire whale Honorable Protector, and Mo Zishang were all seriously injured. Large amounts of blood seeped out of their bodies, especially the demon shark Honorable Protector and fire whale Honorable Protector. Their bodies were huge, and the amount of blood in their bodies was shocking. At this moment, where they fell, the ground was dyed red with blood. The demon shark Honorable Protector's teeth, which were known to have the strongest defense, were all gone. The fire whale Honorable Protector's nose was crooked, and his flesh was badly mangled. Even his tail was broken. Mo Zishang was already seriously injured. Now that he was hit by the mysterious man, he fainted. His situation wasn't much better than Linfeng's. "It's you guys?" the middle-aged man asked coldly. Without waiting for their reply, he stood up and clenched his fist, ready to destroy the 3 of them with a punch. The middle-aged man's domineering temperament was vividly displayed. "Stop!" Just as the middle-aged man was about to punch out, a faint voice rang throughout the entire Qingluan city. However, the middle-aged man didn't seem to hear it. His clenched fist punched out without hesitation. Chapter 363. Who was the middle-aged man? Without a doubt, he was the reinforcements that Nono and Huang Wenbing had called for, Lord Black Rice. Of course, Lord Black Rice wasn't the only one who came. Poison Eye and Slaughter were also there. The one who attacked was Lord Black Rice. As one of the 3 kings of Despair Prison, he was still domineering even though his strength was suppressed. He didn't put this expert in his eyes at all. His punch didn't slow down at all. With one punch, the space exploded. "I told you to stop." When Lord Black Rice punched out, the owner of the voice was instantly annoyed. Unfortunately, before that person arrived, Lord Black Rice's terrifying attack was already close to the Demon Shark Protector, Fire Whale Protector, and Mo Zishang. Although the mysterious person wanted to block Lord Black Rice's attack, he was too far away and his strength was limited. Lord Black Rice broke through the barrier and then, boom! A shocking explosion turned countless houses into ruins. Even many innocent people were implicated and lost their lives. The Demon Shark Protector and Fire Whale Protector didn't even have time to scream before they turned into ashes. The only expression on their faces before they died was endless regret, fear, and shock. Losing his life for a 3-striped Supreme King artifact and a 3-striped Supreme King armor was not worth it at all. They would never have thought that they would lose their lives just to complete a mission in the Greenwood continent. South Sea. A floating stone beside the ice dragon of the South Sea suddenly shattered. A smile appeared on his face. "Looks like it's a success." He immediately flew out of the Ice Crystal Palace and prepared to head to the Greenwood continent. "Where are you going?" An old voice sounded in its ears. He stopped and said respectfully, "The Greenwood continent." The voice was thoughtful. "Is it because of what happened just now?" "Perhaps you've guessed wrongly. Your two protectors have already been destroyed by an Earth Saint expert. The ice dragon of the South Sea was shocked. How is that possible? Didn't you guys agree not to attack anyone below the Earth Sage level? It's a bit complicated. Let's go. I'll take you there and tell you more on the way. As soon as the voice fell, the ice dragon of the South Sea felt his body being restrained by a force and shot out of the sea. Everyone's eyes widened and their souls trembled. Too strong. They could no longer express their feelings with words. The mysterious man clearly saw Mo Zishang's death and immediately roared in rage, "You deserve to die." Du Tong and Sha channeled some essence force into Lin Feng's body to stabilize his condition temporarily. They then walked over to Lord Lin Feng with an ugly expression. Sha said in a deep voice, "Big brother, Lin Feng's internal organs are all damaged to varying degrees. His muscles are atrophied. I'm afraid it will be hard for him to recover." Poison Eye nodded and said coolly, "That's right." Lord Black Rice's face turned gloomy and he blamed himself. "It's all our fault for not protecting him in the dark. Big brother, you can't blame us for this. Who knew that something like this would happen? After all, we aren't slaves. It's impossible for us to pay attention to him all the time and ensure his safety." Sha Xing shook his head and said, "The only thing we can do now is to protect his life for now and hope that he can recover on his own in the future. Although the probability is very low, this is the only way." "Difficult," Poison Eye said. "He is Lord Lin Hai's descendant. I believe that he can recover." Lord Black Rice clenched his fist and looked at the two. "What do you think?" Seeing Lord Black Rice like this, Poison Eye and Sha Xing felt helpless, but they could only agree. Yes, it should be possible. At this time, Lin Feng had slowly regained consciousness. However, he didn't have any strength. It was difficult for him to even open his eyes. He could only continue to lie on the ground with his eyes closed and listen quietly. "Boss." Nono and Huang Wenbing looked at Lin Feng worriedly. They blamed themselves and were in pain and worry. Boom. Suddenly, a deafening sound of something breaking through the air entered everyone's ears. In the sky, a fiery red light flashed and finally stopped diagonally above Lin Feng, Lord Black Rice, Poison Eye and the rest. That was a middle-aged man with scarlet-red eyebrows, hair, and beard. He was like a ball of fire, so much so that he could even set the surrounding space ablaze. He gave everyone a feeling of extreme danger. As long as he was willing, he could burn the entire Green Luan city to ashes with a wave of his hand. His face was ugly and gloomy as he said coldly, "I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me?" Lord Black Rice met his gaze and said calmly, "I heard you. You heard me and you still dare to attack." The middle-aged man suddenly roared. His red eyebrows stood up and his body shone with a red light. "Do you think I will stop just because you told me to? Who do you think you are?" Lord Black Rice didn't give him any face and raised his eyebrows. "You're just a kid who just entered Earth Saint. How dare you order me around?" He sensed a little and realized that this middle-aged man had just entered Earth Saint not long ago. At most, it had been less than 5,000 years. Perhaps in the eyes of a normal person, 5,000 years was a long time. Even in the eyes of an honorable, 5,000 years wasn't a short time. However, in the eyes of an Earth Saint, 5,000 years wasn't long. Especially those who had stayed in the Despair Prison, they had a deeper understanding of this. Back then, how many experts had Lord Black Rice seen? Beginner Earth Saint, Middle Earth Saint, High Earth Saint, and even Full Circle Earth Saint. Which one of them hadn't lived for hundreds of thousands or even millions of years? Compared to that, 5,000 years wasn't worth mentioning. Hearing his words, Honorable Ziyang and the rest couldn't help but roll their eyes. This was an Earth Saint, an invincible Earth Saint. Why did Lord Black Rice call him a mere Earth Saint? However, Honorable Ziyang obviously couldn't care less. Seeing this middle-aged guest, he couldn't help but kneel on the ground and shouted, "Emo clans Emo Ziang greets the old ancestor." Obviously, this middle-aged man was the Emo clan's old ancestor, Emo Cheong. Beginner Earth Saint Emo Cheong. Ha ha ha. Emo Cheong obviously wasn't in the mood to care about Honorable Ziyang. When he heard Lord Black Rice's words, he was so angry that he started laughing. What a mere! I, Emo Cheong, have lived for hundreds of millions of years, and this is the first time someone has dared to speak to me like this. His voice was getting colder and colder. He was already planning to kill Lord Black Rice. However, just as he was about to attack, someone else arrived. Hee, you guys don't mind if I join in the fun, right? A purple-haired, green-eyed, devilish youth suddenly appeared beside Lord Black Rice and Emo Cheong. Emo Cheong stopped and frowned. It's you. There was a hint of fear in his voice. The devilish purple-haired youth smiled. I didn't expect you to recognize me so quickly. Humph. Emo Cheong snorted, but that was it. In front of this devilish purple-haired youth, no matter how angry he was, he didn't dare to act up. Purple blood, this is the territory of humans. You better control your temper. Soon, another figure arrived. This person didn't seem to be afraid of the purple-haired youth's strength and spoke rudely. It was a white-haired elder with white hair and a youthful face. His strength was unfathomable. He was the most powerful Earth Sage among the humans, one she. Mid-level Earth Sage, one she. However, from his words, it seemed that this devilish purple-haired youth wasn't human. Earth Sage demonic beasts had the ability to transform into humans. Presumably, this devilish purple-haired youth's true form was a demonic beast. Purple blood pursed his lips. Old Manwen, I've already said that I'm only here to join in the fun. Are you not even allowing me to join in the fun? Although he couldn't do anything to the old man might not be able to do anything to him either. Both of them were mid-level Earth Sages. Although the old man's comprehension of the laws was higher than his true form was that of a demonic beast. His physical body was strong, and he had innate divine abilities. If they really fought, it would at most be a draw. Senior 1. Emo Cheong bowed respectfully. When she nodded at Emo Cheong, then looked at Purple Blood. I hope you're really just here to join in the fun. Just as he finished speaking, another person appeared. This time, it was an Earth Sage and a supreme being from the demonic beast race. In front of them was the demonic beast race's low-level Earth Sage, Mother Zhang, and the Southern Seas Ice Dragon. How can I be absent from such a lively scene? Holy Land Saint Zhang Mu laughed. Emo Zishang's Emo clan's old ancestor Emo Cheong, the strongest Earth Sage of the humans, when she, the continent's demonic beast race's Earth Sage Purple Blood, and the sea's demonic beast race's Earth Sage Mother Zhang. 2 human Earth Sages and 2 demonic beast races Earth Sage formed a delicate situation. Purple Blood looked around and said in surprise, we're still missing one. Then all of us Earth Sages will be here. We're still missing one? Everyone was stunned for a moment before they reacted. That's right, there was still one human Earth Sage who hadn't arrived. In the current world, there were 3 human Earth Sage demonic beasts and 2 Earth Sage demonic beasts. The Southern Seas Ice Dragon could barely be counted as half a Earth Sage demonic beast. This created a delicate situation where neither side would easily start a war. Of course, in the past, the demonic beast race was weak and did not have the qualifications to fight with the humans. They could only live in seclusion, deep in the sea, in the remote setting sun plain, or in the demonic beast forest. Only the weaker demonic beasts dared to attack the human territory. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. Most of them did not know the difference in strength between the humans and the demonic beasts, so naturally, they were not afraid. Until Purple Blood's sudden appearance, the demonic beast race finally had the strength to contend with the humans. The demonic beast forest was a little special. Although there were Earth Sage demonic beasts in the demonic beast forest, and more than one at that, these Earth Sage demonic beasts would never interfere in the conflicts between the demonic beasts and the humans. Unless the humans provoked them, they would always stay in the center of the demonic beast forest and never leave. When she ignored Purple Blood and stared deeply at the Southern Seas Ice Dragon. With his strength, he could naturally see the Southern Seas Ice Dragon's cultivation at a glance. The Southern Seas Ice Dragon was currently at the peak of Supreme Being's limit, half a step into the Earth Sage realm. In time, the demonic beast race would have another Earth Sage demonic beast. This wasn't good news. Earth Sage demonic beasts, especially divine beasts like the Southern Seas Ice Dragon, had extremely terrifying combat strength. Even if it had just entered the Earth Sage realm, it would not be weaker than Emo Cheong, who had been in the Earth Sage realm for 5,000 years. It might even be stronger. Fortunately, Purple Blood did not seem to be too interested in the conflict between the demonic beast race and the humans. Its attention was focused on something else, so when she was slightly relieved, "I'm not interested in talking nonsense with you. I only want revenge." Emo Cheong's face was gloomy as he looked at Lord Black Rice, Poison Eye, Sha Xing, Lin Feng, Nono, and Huang Wenbing. They killed the Mo family's most promising descendant who had the highest chance of entering the Earth Sage realm. I will not forgive them. It's best if you don't interfere in this matter. Earth Sage Mother Zhang laughed loudly. Then hurry up and do it. If you don't do it, I will. You should know that 2 of our Supreme Beings' limit died in their hands. Purple Blood looked at Lord Black Rice and the others gloatingly. When she frowned slightly and hesitated, as if he was weighing something. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.